it's important for people to, even though it sounds kind of wonky to talk about the administrative state, right? You recall when Steve Bannon came into office back in 2017, as Trump's lead advisor, he said, our primary goal here is to dismantle the administrative state. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, the administrative state is basically the federal bureaucracy. The administrative state is what keeps us safe. It's what keeps our food, prevents our food from having deadly bacteria in it. It's what prevents our drugs from being contaminated with poisons, not even working well. The administrative state is what makes sure that our cars keep us safe when they crash. The administrative state is what protects us from predatory bankers and insurance companies that would just delight in ripping us off, as they did for years and years and years. The administrative state is what makes sure that if your home has a fire, for example, the insulation in your walls isn't going to kill you before the fire does. The administrative state is what keeps your toys safe. The administrative state is what makes sure that banks don't crush your money with them. And Trump and the 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court are dedicated to destroying or dismantling the administrative state, because the administrative state is the primary enemy of giant corporations that want to pollute, that want to rip off, that want to, and also the administrative state in the Biden administration anyway has been going after monopolies. They've been blocking mergers, most recently Kroger's and Albertsons, as I recall. They just, they're in this lawsuit with Google to force Google to break up. It looks like all that's going to go by the wayside. So what we're going to end up with, if what Bannon and Trump tell us is true, and we have no reason not to believe it is that this regulatory framework, the administrative state, is just going to go. It's going to be destroyed or substantially weakened. Now, what will the impact on that be for you and me? Well, first of all, everything will become more dangerous, right? We will all be more subject to corporate predation. But secondly, and I think this is a big deal, the administrative state is what keeps the economy together. And if you crash the administrative state, you're inviting, at the very least, a recession and possibly a depression. Every Republican president since Nixon, a major recession during their presidency. Not one single Democratic president has had a major recession during their presidency since Nixon. Not one. And the reason why, by and large, is that Republicans come into office and what do? They reduce regulations and they cut taxes, and those things produce recessions. Now, that's fine with the Republicans, because they're there to do the bidding, to do the will of the billionaires, and the big corporations, of the very rich people. And when you have a recession, that is just an incredible buying opportunity for billionaires. Recessions are, I talked about this last week. Recessions are when some of the greatest fortunes in America are made. Recessions are small businesses, homeowners, average people. People are thrown into bankruptcy. People lose their jobs. Their 401k collapses. They have to start selling their stock just to pay the rent. And what happens? Stock prices drop. Housing prices drop. Businesses are in crisis, and small businesses start going out of business, and the vultures, the billionaires, sweep in and buy up the stock and buy up the homes. We saw that in a big way in 2008, 2009, 2007, 2008, excuse me, and buy up the small businesses. We saw that in 2020. And the administrative state prevents a lot of that predation, but that's all going to go away, or much of it is going to go away under the Trump administration. And now the Chevron deference has been nuked. The Chevron deference basically said that the administrative state, the government agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, for example, they can, based on the good science that they have available to them, they can make rules and they can enforce those rules as if they were law. And the Supreme Court has said, no, you can't. And so the EPA can no longer, for example, regulate carbon dioxide, because the law that created the EPA doesn't say carbon dioxide. this is, so far, the camel's nose under the tent. But, pretty soon the entire damn camel and, 30 more in the herd are going to be inside the tent here with us. It's going to be, we're going to be overwhelmed by this in the Trump administration. I mean, just consider how, what he tried to do in his last administration. I mean, he's how corrupt. And that was like minor corruption because he wasn't actually destroying regulatory agencies. He was just putting people in charge of them who didn't like their mandates. Donald Trump put a coal lobbyist in charge of the EPA. He put an oil lobbyist in charge of the Interior Department. He put a telecom lawyer in charge of the FCC. He put a professional union-busting lawyer, Anthony Scalia's son, in charge of the Labor Department. He put an advocate for replacing our public schools with religious schools, Betsy DeVos, in charge of the Department of Education. And it goes on and on. Basically, every major cabinet position, every major agency was staffed by somebody who was actually hostile to those agencies. But we still had the Chevron deference. We still had the ability of these agencies to do their jobs. We also still had a functioning civil service. Now, this goes back to the Pendleton Civil Service Act of 1888, if my recollection is correct. Maybe it was 1886. But it was, after this wannabe member of the administration shot the president. I think it was Garfield. I'd have to go back and look. Shot the president because the president refused to give him a job after he wrote a speech for the president. That's when they said, okay, no more spoils system. We're going to have a real civil service. We're going to have a functioning civil service. I should write about this for my daily take. We're going to have a functioning civil service. And that isn't beholden to politics. Well, Donald Trump tried to undo that in the last several weeks of his administration back in 2020, when he did this Schedule F reassignment, causing civil servants to no longer be members of the civil service, but instead to be political appointees. Under Project 2025, he's going to do that on day one to like 50,000 people. He's going to decapitate the tops of the agencies and replace them with political toadies who will do whatever the billionaires and the big corporations, the drug companies, the oil companies, whatever they want. And I'm telling you, this is going to crash the economy. Every Republican president has a recession because of the way they screw around with this stuff, and Trump will be no exception. So get ready. Warren Buffett in this coming. Warren Buffett has sold $325 billion worth of stock, and he's sitting on that money in money markets. He's gone to cash.
We take life back!
Today we're reading from It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America by David K. Johnston. This is from page 61, the chapter titled Forgetting the Forgotten Man. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Labor created a website to honor workers who died on the job. Quote, more than 4,500 workers, lose their lives on the job every year. Below are the names of just a few who have died in recent months. OSHA's mission is to prevent workplace injuries, illnesses, and death, end quote. That Occupational Safety and Health Administration webpage was intended to highlight and humanize workplace deaths, to ensure awareness of tragedies, especially those that could have been avoided, according to Jordan Barab, an Assistant Secretary of Labor during the Obama administration. Barab explained, without information like this, fatality statistics are just raw, sterile numbers. The purpose of adding names and circumstances was to impress people with the tragedy that workers and their families face day after day. In August 2017, Trump's Labor Department quietly removed the preamble and the names when it killed the web page. It also took down, without public announcement, the fatality inspection data for all years prior to 2017. Those were just two of many other Trump administration actions inimical to worker safety. Others included no longer posting press releases about deaths resulting from unsafe working conditions, delaying rules to reduce sickness and death from inhaling silica and beryllium at work, delaying rules to lower the risk of railroad engineers and truck drivers falling asleep at the switch or wheel because of untreated sleep apnea, and the appointment to the Supreme Court of a judge who held that a company had the right to fire a worker who chose not to freeze to death on the job. A reasonable person listening to Donald Trump's inaugural address would never have expected these and other actions, assuming he believed what Trump said. Trump declared, "The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no more. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens," end quote. Those men and women were forgotten again the following week. And it's not just workers whose interests were forgotten, not to mention who were put in danger. By deciding not to implement a rule to reduce the chances of truck drivers and train operators falling asleep at the wheel, Trump put at risk the lives of families driving along the highway, people riding on passenger trains, and many others. The White House called it President Trump's war on regulation. In his weekly radio address in early May, he declared that we've removed one job-killing regulation after another, and they're not pretty, and they're going. And believe me, we're just getting started on regulations. They're gone. Removal of data on workplace deaths, which averaged 13 per day, infuriated Jordan Barab, who is Obama's number 2 at OSHA. As a private citizen, Barab created a web page to keep track of the names of the dead and the reasons they were killed on the job. He called it, "OSHA won't tell you who died in the workplace, we will." After the election, Barab's concerns that the Trump administration would be bad for workers increased when he asked where the Trump beachhead team was and learned that none was coming. Each incoming administrator sends people to scope out federal agencies, learn who does what, and get a feel for the place in advance. Then the incoming administration sends its landing team, the people who will initially implement its policies for each agenda, or at each agency. When no beachhead team came up, Barab figured it meant worker safety simply was not a priority for Trump. He hoped that was the worst of it, nothing more than apathy about worker safety. But when the landing team arrived, Barab realized trouble was coming for American workers, and it was not official apathy, but the start of assaults on workers' rights and safety. Barab said most of them had no idea they were going to labor and no interest in workers' issues either. What they did have was a mandate to delay, repeal, or weaken regulations that protected workers, as part of Trump's plan to eliminate, quote, any regulation that is outdated, unnecessary, bad for workers, or contrary to the national interest, end quote. The first sign came when Trump nominated Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. Gorsuch was an acolyte of Antonin Scalia, whose seat he would be taking. Like Scalia, he said statutes should be literally read, and if that made no sense, well, that was a problem for Congress. Also, like Scalia, he had a habit of consulting dictionaries, often following Scalia's practice of relying on the third, fourth, or even lesser definition of a word when it supported his jurisprudence. Trump's nomination alarmed unions. Brady Calamine, a communications worker or American lawyer, told Gorsuch's Senate confirmation hearing in court that Gorsuch, quote,
This
is a threat
is
to
the
working
Thom
people's
Hartmann
health
Program.
and safety, unquote. Hey, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak. It's the end of the week. Happy Friday. It's Anything Goes Friday as well. We have no guests today. It's going to be you and me for 3 hours. So what's on your mind? We'll get to all that. I've got a few things that I want to share with you as we go through the program. My op-ed today, Alexander Hamilton's nightmare realized, how billionaires hijacked America. Also, NBC hosts and producers are now under threat as ex-Trump people start fleeing the country. Seriously. The Russia report will make your toes curl. We'll get to all that stuff. In the second hour of the program, Remaking the Democratic Party, Healing the Blue Abandonment of 2024, and Blueprint of Destruction. Experts outline chillingly clear view of Trump's next term. And also, Marjorie Taylor Greene is teasing who will be arrested for crimes against humanity by Matt Gaetz, and it's pretty chilling. Should Dr. Fauci flee the country? Should you? Should I? And in the third hour of the program, are the Republicans coming for health care for both retired and working people? Sure looks like it. So we got a lot to talk about here today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my op-ed this morning just because, you know, we've all discussed it so many times, but it's titled Alexander Hamilton's Nightmare Realized, How Billionaires Hijacked America. Hamilton in Federalist 68 and 71, was just so certain that all these checks and balances, that the president would be checked by the Supreme Court, that the president would be checked by Congress, the president would be, the Electoral College would help make sure that a wise elder was selected as president of the United States. He writes, the process of election affords a moral certainty that the office of president will never fall to the lot of any man who is not in an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. He goes on to say, talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state. But it would require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole Union, or of so considerable a portion of it as would be necessary to make him a successful candidate for the distinguished office of President of the United States. Well, here we are. What Hamilton didn't plan for was a 40-year campaign by right-wing billionaires to pack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then legalizing political bribery and knocking down hundreds of state and federal laws. And then a series of Republican presidents knocking down our guardrails with regard to the media ownership rules and the fairness doctrine and equal time rule and all that kind of thing. So I go through all this in considerable detail. I think if any of this interests you, I think you'll find it fascinating. And this is also why, basically, since the Reagan Revolution, since the 1980s, before the 1980s, we got pretty much everything we wanted. We got unions, we got Medicare, we got Social Security, we got Medicaid, we got housing support, we got free college, we got very, very cheap health care because health insurance companies and hospitals were both required to be nonprofits. I mean, things were working really well. And then the Reagan Revolution happened, and basically, Reagan turned America over to the billionaire class and cut their taxes. And now nothing gets done in Congress that most people want. For example, reducing or ending student debt, freer low-cost college, dental, hearing, and eyeglasses for seniors on Medicare, raising the cap on Social Security so it's solvent, getting the post office into personal banking for low-income people, stopping global warming, making pharmaceuticals affordable, Medicare for all, taxing the rich, cutting back on fossil fuel emissions, breaking up the big monopolies to restore competition. None of that stuff is happening. Why? Because every single time we try to do any of it, Republicans block it because they are being basically bribed, legally, of course, by right-wing billionaires and big corporations. And this is America becoming a mafia state. With Trump and the corrupt toadies he's inserting into our government, we're all kind of stuck living in Alexander Hamilton's nightmare. It's going to be at least 2 years before we can do anything about this at the ballot box. But we have to get ready now. Show up for your local Democratic Party. Volunteer to be a precinct committee person. Join a group like Indivisible. Become an evangelist for democracy. And share the media that you like and use. And this isn't just a pitch for me and my newsletters. There's a lot of great stuff out there. There's an awful lot of it on Substack in particular that you can share with your friends, your relatives, and people you work with. And, let's this is not the time to check out and run away and hide. Let's get active. In other news today, Steve Bannon has threatened MSNBC. He told MSNBC's Ari Melber yesterday that all you hosts and the producers at the network had better lawyer up because Matt Gaetz' Justice Department is going to be coming after you. He said, the American people weighed in and you were inundated for years. Weissman, you were on TV with MSNBC and all the producers, MSNBC. Preserve your documents. Ari Melber and all your hosts, preserve your documents. All of it, Bannon said. You better be worried. You better lawyer up. Some of you young producers, you better call mom and dad tonight. Mom and dad, you know a good lawyer? Lawyer up, Bannon said. You tried to destroy Trump. You tried to imprison Trump. You tried to break Trump. He's not breakable. You couldn't destroy him. And now he's turned on you, and he's put a firebrand in charge of Maine Justice, the Department of Justice, and you're going to have to live with it. So, number one, they're coming to take us away, ha-ha, you know, as the old song went. Number two, Bill O'Reilly argued that President-elect Donald Trump's nominations that he's announced so far are part of a top-down strategy where Trump will run everything through loyal supporters. This is what Bill O'Reilly said. He said, Hegseth is, the nominee for defense secretary. Hegseth is going to watch the generals because Trump got so burned by that. And he's so angry that he wants a watchdog play with Pete Hegseth, okay? And he's a very loyal guy to Trump. So you have to understand it's a top-down on Trump. Trump is going to run everything, and he wants eyes and ears in all the areas reporting back to him. That's how this country is going to be run. Bill O'Reilly summed it up saying that Trump felt burned by D.C. during his first administration, and he's going to stick to the MAGA faithful in his second administration. Meanwhile, Trump is starting to sue the media. And he's coming after them aggressively. Trump's lawyer, Edward Palcic, issued a letter to the New York Times and Penguin Random House that demanded $10 billion in damages over articles critical of Trump. He accused the article's author, Peter Baker, Michael Schmidt, Suzanne Craig, and Russ Buettner for false and defamatory statements about Trump, adding that the New York Times is a full-throated mouthpiece of the Democratic Party that wages industrial-scale libel against political opponents. He's suing the publisher, Penguin Random House, for their because of this book by Buettner and Craig. It's called Lucky Loser, How Donald Trump Squandered His Father's Fortune and Created the Illusion of Success. They also identify an October 20th article by Baker titled, For Trump, a Lifetime of Scandals Heads Toward a Moment of Justice. This was in the New York Times, as well as an October 22 article by Schmidt titled, As Election Nears, Kelly Warns Trump Would Rule Like a Dictator. The Columbia Journalism Review reports that on November 5th, lawyers for Trump's campaign co-chief Chris LaCivita issued a letter to the Daily Beast demanding the outlet correct its articles that said LaCivita raised $22 million to help Trump's reelection. In response to the letter, the Daily Beast added an editor's note to the article saying, based on a further review of FEC records, the correct amount is $19.2 million. The Beast regrets the error. The article has also been updated to make clear that payments were to LaCivita's LLC, not to him personally. But that wasn't enough for the Trump campaign. They said this does not remedy, and they're still going after him. Trump and his lawyers have now sued CBS News, alleging that the 7 October interview with Kamala Harris was election interference. They want $10 billion in damages from CBS News. And they've also complained to the Federal Election Commission about the Washington Post. They are coming after the media, as I predicted. The response to this is wild. I got a call this morning from a friend of mine who lives in Washington, D.C. and knows a number of highly placed people, mostly from the former Clinton administration and the Hillary Clinton campaign, who said that, who gave me the names of a couple people he knows who are actually this month leaving the country. They're like moving their residences out of the United States. So here, this article by Brad Reed over at Raw Story is titled, Ex-Trump Officials Apply for Foreign Citizenship as They Finalize Plans to Flee. Multiple people who work for President-elect Donald Trump's first administration are making plans to flee the country for fear that he might target them once he retakes power in January. The Washington Post reports that a retired U.S. Army officer who clashed with Trump officials, a member of Trump's first administration who has publicly denounced him, I'm guessing that would be General Kelly, but who knows, it might have been Milley, and a former United States intelligence official are all making plans to flee to foreign nations ahead of Trump's second inauguration. A retired Army officer who's been applying for Italian citizenship told the Post of the Trump appointments. He says, I feel like I've stepped through the looking glass. Mark Zaid, a national security lawyer who has represented government whistleblowers, tells the Post he's been counseling clients about their options for fleeing the country once Trump returns to the White House. It's wild stuff. Absolutely wild stuff. All that and the Russia report, is, which is basically about Tulsi Gabbard this morning. It's going to curl your toes. I'll get to that on the other side of the break, and I'll be picking up your calls for the rest of the hour as we roll on Anything Goes Friday. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Let's pick up some calls here. Dwayne in Longmont, Colorado. Hey, Dwayne, what's on your mind this morning?
Well, I just happened to notice, thanks for taking my call. I just happened to notice that the stock market is taking a big dive today.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if maybe a lot of the investor class has realized that crazy has come to town, and that's not good for the market. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for anything.
I think the main thing that drove the market drop this morning was the drop in pharmaceutical company shares. I mean, there's radical drops in the 7 big pharmaceutical companies. But I also agree with your assessment, Dwayne, and I don't think the Trump administration is going to be good for the stock market, for the economy in general.
Yeah, the other thing that I was just wondering about too, maybe this is the time to try to push through during this lame duck session, a comprehensive immigration bill, and then if it doesn't get passed, during the Trump administration or during the first 2 years, we can use it in the off elections coming up in 2 years. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's already passed. It's already passed the Senate this year, and Mike Johnson blocked it in the House at the request of Donald Trump. My guess is that something even more radical will get written next year and passed by the House and Senate that will empower Trump to do even more wild things than he's proposed up to this point. But we'll have to wait and see.
And I guess the other thing is stay safe.
Yeah, we all need to stay safe. So it's going to be a tough 4 years. I can tell you that right now. Dwayne, thanks for the call. David in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Yeah. So I totally agree with your take yesterday that we need to declare class warfare. And you have the working class, and you need a name for the extreme rich. Just call them the billionaire class.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be enough. David Brooks came out against the billionaires, saying the Democratic Party needs to become the party of the bottom 90%. I mean, David Brooks, the conservative Republican longtime columnist for the New York Times, who occasionally, does some really thoughtful pieces. He's apparently pretty horrified by all this too. So, I think that we are just, we've just seen the edge of the tent lifted up. We're just seeing the first little bits of darkness, and it is not encouraging. It is not encouraging at all, David.
Tom, I wanted to ask you this question. It says, what % of the voters would vote Democratic if they voted facts and truth? What do you think it would be?
Well,
if people just voted facts and truth.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to answer the question. I mean, first of all, truth can mean a lot of different things to different people, and people can selectively choose which facts they're going to acknowledge and which they're not, which is kind of the essence of our political divide these days. And
I'm just talking about totally the truth, you know. And it's like you always said before, you know, it's the 1% that is Republican, and then you have all the suckers, you know, that are willing to vote against their own self-interest.
Yeah. I get it. David, I got to run. Thank you for the call. We'll be back. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Way back in 1964, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Republicans started this rant about how the election of 1960, Jock Kennedy stole that election, and there's voter fraud in America. And it became a thing. They started this thing called Operation Eagle Eye. William Rehnquist was running it in Arizona, trying to intimidate Hispanics and African Americans into not voting, essentially. They have now used this claim that non-citizens are voting, this voter fraud claim, in virtually every red state to make it harder to vote, to purge people off the voting rolls, to make people's votes not counted with their exact signature matches. It's a scam. It's a grift that they've been running for 60 years, and the American media won't call them out on it. There's a whole piece about it called Trump and the GOP's Big Lie 2.0 over at HartmannReport.com. Please check it out. You'll find it fascinating.
Federalist words lost in the wind. What's left of the dream they tried to defend. Our founders, they knew, they painted it clear, a republic betrayed by silence and fear. But they tore it apart, $1 at a time, bought off the judges, crossed every line, a country on fire, truth in disguise. Oh, Hamilton warned us, but we closed our eyes. They twisted the rules, let the rich run the show, made fortunes in shadows where no light could go. Supreme Court for sale, rights on a thread, the voice of the people buried instead. Now they tore it apart, $1 at a time.
Welcome back, 24 minutes past the hour. Wow. Okay, this... The ex-Trump officials. Yeah, I did share this story, didn't I, about the ex-Trump officials? Yeah. Yeah, I did. Thank you. The Russia report. Here we go. Got too many pieces of paper here in front of me. Sorry. This Russia report, by the way, is a Substack newsletter that I subscribe to that I recommend. It's the Russia report. .substack.com, and they note. I'll just share it with you straight up verbatim. It's about Tulsi Gabbard, represented Hawaii in Congress from 2013 to 2021. She secretly met Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad in 2017 and opposed U.S. intervention in the war in Syria to support the uprising against him. And then this is a quote from Muaz Mustafa, the executive director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force. He wrote it yesterday on X. He said, I took Tulsi to see victims of Russia and Assad on the Turkish-Syrian border when she was in Congress. She ridiculed them. She spoke to 3 little girls who were burned from head to toe after a Russian Assad attack. She asked how they were sure it was Russia and Assad who bombed them. WTF. 3 days, on February 27th, 2022, 3 days after Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, Gabbard made a video in which she said, and I quote, Dear Presidents Putin, Zelensky, and Biden, it's time to put geopolitics aside and embrace the spirit of aloha, respect and love for the Ukrainian people by coming to an agreement that Ukraine will be a neutral country, no military alliance with NATO or Russia, and therefore alleviate the legitimate security concerns of both U.S. and NATO countries, as well as Russia, because there'd be no Russian or NATO troops on each other's non-Baltic borders. This would allow the Ukrainian people to live in peace. Aloha. A month later, Vladimir Soliev referred to Gabbard on his TV show, a Russian television program, as our girlfriend. In November of last year, the Russia Report writes, Gabbard falsely stated, quote, Zelensky now has absolute control of Ukrainian media, outlawed opposition political parties and Ukraine's Orthodox Church, declared martial law, and uses absolute power under martial law to cancel presidential elections. Whew. A lot going on there. A lot to process. You know, what are we going to do with all this? Like I said, the Democratic Party and our institutions, including our nonprofits, like indivisible.org in particular, seems to be the one that has kind of floated to the top the way Move On did in the late 90s, I think are going to be our best defense against this, and we really need to be supporting them.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls right after this. Stay with us. Book Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms and our fields, our streets and our sewers, our bodies and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until, at last, we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits, in that secret, a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. Punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it. The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about health care and health finance. They are different. Healthcare is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Healthcare is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Healthcare is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate health care has convinced us that some people deserve health care and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us or could ever keep us from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty, while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer health care, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide health care to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest healthcare program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single payer is demonstrably sound and eminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. I believe this nation owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of healthcare. I believe this healthcare is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are healthcare. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer healthcare is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single-payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people, and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18, and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust.
Yeah.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you could be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Wake up with the sunrise, feeling so alive. Turn that radio on, let your spirit fly.
Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here on Anything Goes Weekend. Russ in Hickory Hill, Illinois. Hey, Russ, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call, Tom. You know, this blue wall, I ever hear it one more time, I think I'll put a gun to my head. I don't know how you can call this a blue wall. They own the House and Senate in Wisconsin. They just took the House back in Michigan. They own the Senate. They might have took the House. And you're going to give the Senate seat to a Republican. You know, I'll tell you, Tom, this was an embarrassment. You know, and then you hear these people, Republicans, you want to go talk to the Republican voters? Here's one for you, Tom. Oh, yeah, you liberals are going to lose Obamacare, but we're keeping ours because we told them we're Republicans. We have different health care than you. Or the best one here.
Who said that?
Yeah, that's what they're telling. This guy called up in Pennsylvania, and they told him that. Here's the better one, Tom. This is how stupid
are you Russ, where are you getting this? Are you listening to Right Wing Talk Radio, and this is what you're hearing?
No,
or?
Stephanie Miller.
Oh, Stephanie Miller. Okay.
Yeah, here's another one from Stephanie Miller, Tom. You want to know the truth? Here's even a better one. A gay guy, Hispanic, brings his whole family up, and he voted for Trump because he stands for morals.
Right.
This is Stephanie Miller's show saying this, Tom, not me.
Yeah, no, I
listen to her because you got to listen to her because, Tom, I don't know how you can talk to the white middle class after this. I don't know how the Democrats ever recover from this because I quit. If it's not nuisance and the governor from Pennsylvania is his running mate, I don't see anybody, because our governor, I'll let you in on the information now, Tom.
Yeah.
Durbin's thinking of quitting.
Yeah, I think it's probably a pretty safe bet that over the next 4 years, you're going to see the Democratic Party reinvent itself as basically Bernie's party. And if they don't, they're screwed.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the essence of my piece yesterday and my piece on Wednesday. The two articles.
How do you talk to a white person that thinks they've got different insurance than we have? Because they said they signed up. This is coming out of the Stuff Show. A guy called up and said this. They said this to him. Oh, when we sign up, we tell them we're Republicans, so we get different health care than you people.
Right.
Or the gay guy that says, I voted for him because I like him. Tom, these 4 years ain't going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
It's the end of the century. But I'll tell you another thing. He better get his daddy up there because war's on the horizon, Tom.
Yeah, I think so.
That's true.
Iran. Well, it's interesting. Elon Musk was talking to the foreign minister, I believe, maybe the ambassador from Iran yesterday. And, which tells us that Elon Musk actually may well end up being our co-president or our president. He was born in South Africa, so he can't be president. But I haven't heard a word about J.D. Vance being involved in any of this stuff. I think he's been completely sidelined.
Let's be frank. J.D. Vance is going to be the next running mate because he supposedly can't run. Unless they suppress the vote like they do in Florida. There's no way we lose by 1.5 million to 1.9 million in Florida.
Yeah.
They just don't have that many voters.
No,
they ran into Georgia.
Yeah, they're suppressing the vote aggressively in the red states. That's the 8 or 9 million missing Democratic votes. At least half of those are the result of voter suppression. Maybe even more than all of them. Yeah.
Malcolm, that says there's 18 million Democrats didn't show up.
Well, no, that number's a few days old, Russ, because now that they're counting California and Arizona, there's a half a dozen states that are still, literally at this moment, still counting votes.
Did he lose that seat yet, Kasich?
John Kasich? No, John Kasich.
Bob Casey.
Oh, Bob Casey. No, they're going to do a recount in Pennsylvania. So he's running behind right now, but there's still a bunch of votes that haven't been counted because in Pennsylvania,
he was 23,000 votes behind 3 days ago.
Yeah, but the late votes that come in by mail can be counted up to 3 or 4 days after the election, something like that. But they've officially declared, because there was that one county that Stephen Spoonemore was talking about, who's, by the way, going to be on our program on Monday, where there were the number of people who showed up to vote and the number of total votes counted, there was a discrepancy of several thousand. And when they finally went through and did a recount in that particular county, it flipped the county from Trump to Biden, or from Trump to Harris. So, it's wild times at Ridgemont High here, Russ. We'll see.
Well, let's be honest, Tom. He never, when they showed it Tuesday, Tom, Trump never really went up. He stayed the same.
No, I know. And we still don't have the count yet, and it may well be that he's not actually going to win the popular vote. But anyhow, Russ, thanks for the call. Jerry in Venice, California. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Veterans for Peace is back on the beach in Venice. We got one of the 10 by 10 squares in our little, some of our posters and stuff, and we've been there every Sunday for a couple of months. I've been talking to the world, and the world is really wondering where we're going, and this thing with the Veterans Administration, they're trying to get the property at LAVA for housing too. Mm-hmm. And they've had they threw them out once before, all the phony leases. Then they got the new leases, and they still, judge ruled in favor that they don't have to put up the housing yet. And another judge had told them they have to do this. Yeah. It's always a fight over this property because the property doesn't belong to the United States. It belongs to veterans because it was given to us. The deed says Home for Veterans, 1888.
Oh, really?
So it's this vast piece of property that they all covet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I was there in the garden with 12 acres that the UCLA got the new lease to keep their ballpark on the VA. Mm-hmm. So the whole fight over it. But anyway, we're down on that boardwalk, and would like for people for veterans to show up. We're all mostly
so you're out
non-vets.
basically protesting on the boardwalk in Venice, California today?
Well, we're not protesting. We just put up our shingle like we did down at Santa Monica for 15 years.
Right. Okay, I got it. I got it. So you want veterans to drop by. Okay, cool. Jerry, thank you very much. That was a good PSA.
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you. Good talking to you. Susha in Venice, speaking of Venice, California. Hey, Susha, what's up?
Hey, Tom, you're beloved to me and so many. I just feel betrayed by the people who are supposed to keep us safe. So anyway, justifiably, I'm concerned a lot about yours and Louise's safety and well-being given the agenda of these nefarious psychos. They're going to just happily leave this precious country a shell of what we've known it to be. You were in my dream last night. Please have a plan in place to keep them from finding you. So
I'm small fish for them, Susha. They're going after the big fish. They're going after the people on TV.
I'm oversensitive with the sun and moon of Pisces, but and I used to be completely very informed politically before the election. I donated, thank God, I gave Tammy $1,000, and thank God she's still in place. But I can't take the coverage anymore. I don't want to hear what they're doing. I don't want to see him or hear him again.
I get it.
I'm too stressed out by it
interesting.
As an older person, it's going to have a deleterious effect on me. I know you said it's not time to check out, but I can't bear it anymore.
Well, then maybe you should check out. I'm getting basically two kinds of messages from people who subscribe to Hartmann Report. Some people are saying, stop my subscription. I just can't deal with it anymore. I'm going to go back to listening to music and reading about sports. And some people are saying, I'm in it for the fight. I'm going to double down. Let me know how I can help. And they're about 50-50. So, I get it. If you've got to protect yourself emotionally by checking out, do it. It's your own mental health and wellness has to take priority over everything else. Bind yourself to your family. Michael Moore sent out an email a couple of days ago basically saying that, it's time for self-care. I kind of made the joke that Marianne Williamson had taken over Michael Moore's Substack page because it was so kind of, friendly and psychology and new agey and whatnot. But I think there's a lot of truth to it, and self-care is an important thing for all of us. Susha, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear
one more thing. I found 5 restaurants in Vancouver, Washington that are Ethiopian restaurants in Vancouver, Washington.
What's the name?
Oh, just Google Ethiopian restaurants in Vancouver, Washington. I got 5 of them up.
Yeah, I did that, and what I got were all the Ethiopian restaurants in Vancouver, Canada. But
Oh, interesting. All right, love you. Anyway,
Thanks,
love to you. God bless you. Stay safe.
Thank you kindly.
Bye.
Arnie in Palm Springs, California. Hey, Arnie, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I am really confused about what MSNBC has been doing in terms of most of their hosts call Medicare Advantage scam, and yet probably about 3 or 4 times an hour, there are Medicare Advantage commercials on that network.
Well, here's the thing: the side of the network, and you'll find the same thing here. By the way, one of my commercial radio station affiliates is running ads for Medicare Advantage, and people send me notes going, "Oh my God," and I'm like, they've got to stay in business, So anyhow, one part of the company is in charge of selling advertising. The other part of the company is in charge of producing editorial content. And, I think the fact that their hosts are willing to criticize Medicare Advantage at the same time that they're taking ads from Medicare Advantage is actually a healthy sign. It means that MSNBC is not being influenced by their advertisers. I tip their hat to them for that. We had on this program back years ago, this was when we were doing a local show here in Portland on KPOJ. We had Walmart, the sales guys went out and they sold Walmart as one of our advertisers. And I love to pick on Walmart. And in fact, there was the reason they sold the ad is because there was a new Walmart going in Portland. And there was some guy who was, and they were trying to fight the possibility of a union, right? And there was this guy holding this sign on one of the main streets here in Portland that said, no union for Walmart, workers should be independent, or something, some thing like that. And I walked up to, Louise and I walked up to him and said, what's Walmart paying you to hold that sign? Now, at the time, Walmart was paying their people around $8 or $10 an hour. He says, oh, they're paying me $15 an hour. So, so anyhow, the radio station took Walmart's money, and then I picked on him on the air. I mean, I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. I think that's actually a sign that the media is fairly healthy. So, for what it's worth.
So there are no ethics and fact checking or anything like that.
No, it means what it means is that the commercial side of the company is doing their commercial thing, and the editorial side is doing their editorial thing, and the commercial side is not influencing the editorial side. And that's exactly what you want. You want media that is not controlled by its advertisers. So, and frankly, I don't think advertising should be controlled by editorial within limits. I got to run.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I mean, I won't run ads for meat or tobacco, but but I own my own show, so I can make those decisions. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Ziggy in Oneonta, New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yesterday you were asking for class warfare slogans.
Yeah.
And I think I have one.
Okay.
Now, it might be a little crass, so I'll let you know ahead of time. Billionaire bastards.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that. I mean, bastard actually has a literal meaning, which is a child without parents, and or at least without a father, and that. So I wouldn't go there.
That's the main one, but it has other connotations too.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd try throwing that one out there. But also, I wanted to quickly mention. I'm tired of seeing this circular firing squad everywhere. And on TV, they're talking about the appointments. Trump's going to appoint them no matter what. It doesn't matter what happens to the Senate or the House.
Yeah.
And these people need to start waking up to this. And also, I keep getting these things, we're going to fight them in court. No, we're not. Well, we might, but the Supreme Court is rotten from the top down. And even though you have lower courts that might rule in our favor, Trump will just simply say they made their decision, let them enforce it.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't happen.
And my guess is that he's actually going to succeed in convincing the House and Senate that they should recess so that he can just shove all these people into their positions without any hearings, without any discussion. Or he will simply appoint them. Actually, I think the most likely thing he'll do is what he did when he was president before, which is simply appoint them and make them acting.
Appoint them.
And then after the 30 or 90 days that acting people are allowed to serve legally, he'll simply ignore the rule and he'll say, sue me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The same thing in any court decision that's determined.
Yeah.
If he doesn't like it, he just won't abide by it. And also, I know you think I'm nuts for this, but Biden needs to act like Abraham Lincoln and grow up here and actually declare martial law now to protect the Union. I know I'm crazy saying that.
Now, what would he do with that martial law?
Well, first of all, he could do just like Erdogan. He do whatever he wants, but basically stop. Don't allow Trump to take office. Declare the Supreme Court as corrupt and everything. I mean, as martial law, he gets to do essentially what Trump's going to be doing.
Biden's not going
to
do
know
that.
It sounds terrible, and I realize Biden. Well, I know that, but
you don't protect the rule of law by breaking the rule of law. I mean, that's kind of, democracy 101.
I realize that, but what other choice do we have?
The other choice that we have is to do the very best we can for the next 2 years, fight every battle, speak the truth, watch as this new Trump administration does all kinds of wacky and crazy stuff that alienates and pisses off the American public and crashes the economy, and then take back the House and Senate in 2 years and basically stop him.
I hope we can do that. I'm really skeptical. But just so you know, when I'm talking like this, I don't mean to be negative. I will be part of the resistance, though I think the resistance is going to have to go kind of underground at some point. You know what I mean? Because it's just inevitable.
We shall see.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ziggy. Good to hear from you.
Take care.
Appreciate it. It's 51 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in just a moment. Right? There's not a live read here. Yeah, I'll be right back. Stick around. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Brian in Homewood, Illinois. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I just want to let you know I'm in the team of doubling down. I called both of my senators today. Senator Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. I asked both of them, is Durbin going to be filling in all these judge appointments? I was told that he would, and then I asked about the blue slips. I was told the senator put out a statement saying he would be honoring the blue slips, so that's kind of disappointing.
Dick Durbin wimps out again.
I pushed back on that a bit as much as I could. And then the second point I said to both of them is about the messaging. Where is the messaging? What is the Democratic Party saying to their working class voters? And how do we get that message out? I gave them an example. I listened to 8:20 a.m. in Chicago, progressive talk. Mm-hmm. When the sun goes down at night, you can't listen to 820 in all the viewing areas because the satellite's lower. It's a whole contract thing.
No, it's an FCC rule. They have to reduce their power after dark.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't know exactly what it was. But I live in Chicago, can't listen to it. But I can hear the 4 conservative channels in the entire viewing area down to Champaign, and that's a problem. Yeah. The other side owns the media, and I'm here to fight back with that. I'm spreading your name to everybody I know. Thank you for the call.
Well, thank you, Brian, and good on you. We need more people willing to stand up and say, yeah, I'm going to be part of the resistance. Thank you, Brian. Sharon in Minneapolis. Hey, Sharon, what's on your mind today?
Hi there. I have a suggestion for the Democratic Party, and I think they need to start a school for prospective candidates for office, no matter what their office, and even for just regular caring citizens. They need to have in this school topics like sales and marketing, how to talk plainly to people, and there's this theory. I believe the name is Maslow. You probably know better than none.
Yeah.
Right, and you talked about the hierarchies of human needs and motivation. And I think, Democrats are probably one of the best people for well intentions, but as the saying goes, good intentions pave the way to the Hades. Yeah. And you can't get elected by making good intentions. You can't sell a person a product because you think you know better what they need and what they should want.
Yeah.
You got to find out what their needs are.
Yeah.
And why that's important to them.
It's an excellent point, Sharon. When Abraham Maslow wrote Personality and Motivation back in the 1950s or 60s, he laid forth his hierarchy of human needs. And at the foundation, the very bottom of it, of course, is the need for homeostasis. We need to breathe, drink, pee, eat, sleep. The next one above that is safety. We need to feel safe.
Right.
And housing is a part of feeling safe. Not having crime around you is a part of feeling safe. And what Maslow essentially said, and then, you go up through the social needs, having family, first of all, then having friends, and then, the personal intellectual needs, and then at the very top was self-actualization. And essentially what he said was, wherever you are in that pyramid, everything above it vanishes. It no longer exists because you're so focused on that. Like if you're crossing a street and you find yourself in the middle of the street and the light changes and cars are whizzing all around you and you're afraid you might get hit, you're not thinking about, having dinner with your best friend that night or whether or not you want to meditate on Sunday. You're thinking about, I got to get the hell out of here before I get hit. And so you're absolutely right. The hierarchy of human needs can translate into politics.
Likewise, if you're hungry, you're going to do whatever you need to do in order to speak yourself.
Yeah, see the French Revolution.
It might be within your character not to steal, but if I'm hungry, I'm going to steal something.
Yeah, that's Les Mis. I mean, Victor Hugo, right? It's, absolutely. And that analysis is something that the Democratic Party has somehow missed in the last, basically since the Clinton election. And they need to get back to. And that's what Bernie's been talking about all along. I mean, he doesn't use the highfalutin psychology terms like you and I are, but that's the key to the whole thing. Meet people's basic needs first. Sharon, thank you. That was brilliant. We'll be back on the other side of this break. It's Anything Goes Friday. It's you and me all day. What's on your mind? I'll be right back with you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
Say fight back!
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Seize the Time, the story of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton by Bobby Seale. This is from page 85, a subchapter titled Huey Backs the Pigs Down. And there are a few words in here that I'll be filling in, as it were. They're walking, he says, one day as we were walking out of the office, I guess we'd been there about a month or so, a pig passed by. He saw us coming out of the office with shotguns and pistols on our sides. About 6 or 7 of us came out of the office there in the daytime, and we looked at the pig as he passed by, and he jumped on his radio because he saw us coming out of the office with these pieces and stuff. We had just finished field stripping weapons, learning about 00 buckshot, learning about the 9mm and the .45, and having a political education session. We had a .45 and a .357 Magnum in the group and a couple of M1s. We had 3 or 4 shotguns by then. We bought up guns like a son of a bitch then. The pig went down 2 blocks and turned around, came back up the other side of the street. They were building rapid transit, BART, right down from Grove Street there, and we went up the other side of the boulevard and came back. We readily assessed that the pigs were ready to see what the F was happening, that this pig had radioed in, and he was running it down, how he had, quote, seen some N-words come out of a place here with some guns and blop, blop, de bloop, et cetera, come out of this office with guns and stuff. He was radioing into other pigs to help get them. Huey had his father's car that day, and he goes through that whole thing. So anyhow, the police pull him over, and Huey got in the car, and the pig came up to the window. You have any driver's license? So Huey rolled the window down. That wasn't more than a 3 or 4 inch crack in the window. Huey handed his license out the window. Is this your true name, the pig said? And Huey said, yes, that's my true name, Huey P. Newton. Is this your true address, 841 47th Street? And Huey said, yep, that's my true address, 841 47th Street. And what are you doing with the guns? And Huey said, what are you doing with your gun? This particular pig decided he wasn't going to argue, so he went back and got his little writing pad there where they fill out S-word. Your true name is Huey P. Newton? Huey said, that's right. The pig wrote it down. Your true address is 841 47th Street? Huey said, that's right. The pig then looked at his license. What's your phone number? And Huey said, 5, and stopped and wouldn't say anything else. And the pig said, 5 what? And this is when all the S-word between the pig and the party and the pigs began. Huey said, the Fifth Amendment. You ever heard of it? Don't you know about the constitutional right of a person not to testify against himself? 5, I don't have to give you anything but my identification, name, and address, so therefore I don't even want to talk to you. You can leave my car and leave me alone. I don't even want to hear you. What do you mean, the pig said. And Huey said, just what I said. The constitutional right of any man is that he doesn't have to testify against himself. And Huey had a big M1 sitting to his right with his hand on it. I had this 9mm sitting beside me, and Huey had this M1 at his side. Huey was driving. 4 other brothers were in the back seat. One of them was Bobby Hutton. They were being quiet because Huey told them to be quiet, and the pig is going crazy. He's by himself, and Huey's got all these black N-words in the car going for the MFer. Meanwhile, while the pig is trying to get bad, 3 cars drove up behind us and 1 in the front. Some more were in the driveway. Blop, blop, blop de blue. Then another car came in front of us. A pig jumped out of the car, walked up to our car, and said through the crack in the window with a hoggish voice trying to sound intimidating, what's going on here? And Huey said, the same basic procedures that are supposed to go on. Huey rolled the window down another 5 or 6 inches. The pigs were looking at the guns in the car. Can I see that pistol there? One of the pigs said. No, you can't see it, Huey told him. I was beginning to get skeptical about what was happening because he pointed to my 9mm pistol. Huey was on probation, and if they thought that this was Huey's pistol, I didn't know this law stuff the way Huey knew it, so I moved the pistol over beside me real close. It had been lying in the middle of the seat. I said, no, you can't see it. Huey said, no, you can't see the pistol, nor this, pointing to his rifle. And you don't want to look, and I don't want you to look at it. You don't have to look at it. Is that your pistol? He asked Huey. And I said, no, it's not his pistol, it's my pistol. I said that because I was thinking the man's going to jump on Huey because he already told me about the probation law. If he gets caught with a pistol, he's burned. But if he gets caught with a rifle, the man can't mess with him because his probation officer told him he can carry a rifle or shotgun and he couldn't stop him. The pig said, can I see it or not? So Huey said to me, I'll talk. And then he said to the pig, no, you can't see the pistol. Get away from the car. We don't want you around the car, and that's all there is to it. Well, I can ask him if I can see his pistol or not, the pig says. So I says, well, you can't see my pistol. The MFers tried to get indignant. They were blabbing and oinking to each other about who in the hell we thought we were, and Constitution my ass, they're just turning it around. Then the pig said to Huey, who the hell do you think you are? Look, damn it, Huey said. He opened the car door. This is where Huey got mad. I mean, you have to imagine this N-word. He got mad because these dogs were going to carry on and they were bracing up like they were bad. Huey didn't go for this at all. Huey got very mad. He opened up the door saying, who the hell do you think you are? In the first place, this man, pointing at the pig, came up here and asked me for my license like he was citing me for a ticket or observation of some kind. This police officer is supposed to be carrying out his duty, and here you come talking about our guns? Huey put his hand around his M1 rifle and continued, we have a constitutional right to carry the guns, and anyway, I don't want to hear it. The pigs backed up a couple of steps, and Huey was coming out of the car. Huey had his hand back in the car getting his M1. And you know, if you've ever seen Huey, he gets growly but articulate. He came out of the car with his M1. Huey knows this law so well that he wouldn't have had the one M1 loaded inside the car. So he came out of the car. He dropped around into the chamber right away. Clack, clop. Who do you think you all are anyway? Huey said to the pigs. And the pigs were all on the sidewalk harassing all the brothers and sisters who gathered around. You move on down the street, said the pig. Huey started interrupting. You don't have to move down the street. Don't go anywhere. These pigs can't keep you from observing. You have a right to observe an officer carrying out his duty. And these pigs, they listen to all this S-word, and it goes on from there. It's a great story. Seize the Time by Bobby Seale.
Trying to change
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program, Remaking the Democratic Party. This is a fascinating piece by Robert Reich. Suddenly everybody is saying what I've been saying for years, what I've been saying for 2 decades on this program. His opening paragraph basically gives it all away. Democrats must remake the party into the party of the bottom 90%, the party of average working people whose wages have gone nowhere and whose jobs are less secure. He says the biggest takeaway from the election is that Biden's 9 million votes disappeared. Why? He said it couldn't have been because of virulent racism, because we elected a black man twice. It couldn't have been misogyny, since Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than Trump in 2016, and Clinton's actions and statements probably triggered more misogyny in 2016 than did Harris in 2024. I would add to that, Harris never campaigned on her gender. She never once mentioned that she would be the first female president, or the first black president, or the first, South Asian president. Back to Robert Reich. He says there's no evidence of illegal vote tampering or of voter suppression nearly on this scale. In fact, it was easier to cast a ballot this year than in 2020. So what happened to the 9 million people? He says most likely those 9 million potential voters, mostly working class, said to themselves, I won't vote for Trump because he's an ass, but I won't vote for the Democrats either because they don't give a damn about me. So, Reich says, as I've been saying for 21 years on this program, the task for the Democrats is what it should have been all along, remaking the party into the party of the bottom 90%, the party of people who don't live off stocks and bonds. Blue-collar private sector workers earned more on average in 1972 than they are earning right now. So today's blue-collar workers are on average earning less in real dollars than their grandparents earned 52 years ago. Yet the American economy is far larger than it was 52 years ago. Where did the additional money go? To the top 1%. He said, this isn't a blue state versus red state phenomena. It's a class phenomenon. What, did he read my article yesterday? And the day before, how to wage class warfare? He's right. He's absolutely right. He points out in Missouri, a very, very red state, the voters passed an amendment to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by a wide margin, even as they overwhelmingly, rejected Harris. It looks like the same thing happened in Alaska. In Ruby Red, Nebraska, 75% of voters backed a measure to institute paid sick leave, although they rejected Harris. Yeah. But that's only part of it. The rest of it is, the mainstream media has spent the last 4 years basically gaslighting us, constantly reporting on Trump as if he was a rational, insane actor and completely ignoring the accomplishments of the Biden administration. As you know, I lay some of the responsibility for that, at the feet of the Biden administration. You guys should have gotten out there and, made your case and all that sort of thing, far more aggressively than you did. But it's still, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the big television networks, I lay an awful lot of responsibility at their feet for this. Over on Common Dreams, Harvey Kaye, our buddy who is a writer and professor up in Wisconsin, brilliant man. In fact, I got an email from him yesterday or this morning. Harvey's been on the program many times over the years. He writes, when David Brooks goes Bernie bro, sort of, something's up, right? Responding to the polls showing that more working class voters in all their diversity had voted for the Trump-Vance ticket than for Harris-Walz, Brooks proffered nothing less than an historical class analysis of what had led them to turn from the party of the people to the party of a billionaire real estate mogul and his Make America Great Again politics. In fact, even before Sanders himself issued a post-election attack on the Democratic establishment, stating that it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party that has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them, Brooks charged the Democrats with having failed to fulfill their primary political responsibility. This is what David Brooks wrote in the New York Times. Now, keep in mind, David Brooks is one of their, he has to have been writing for them for 20 years. I've been reading David Brooks stuff since before I started doing this show. And he's a he's what you would call a moderate conservative, I guess. And this is what Brooks wrote. He said, the Democratic Party has one job: to combat inequality. We don't even hear that word in the corporate media, of course, because the corporate media is largely owned by billionaires, and most of the people on the air in the corporate media are making over $1 million a year. So, they're not going to be talking about inequality. But anyhow, it goes on. He says, this is David Brooks again. Here was a great chasm of inequality right before their noses, and somehow many Democrats didn't see it. I'm a moderate, David Brooks writes. I like it when Democratic candidates run to the center. But I have to confess that Harris did that pretty effectively, and it didn't work. And let me add my commentary here. Campaigning with Liz Cheney, mistake. Talking about how we want to give Republicans a seat at the table, big mistake. It's time to declare class warfare. Anyhow, back to David Harris. He says, but I have to confess that, he says, maybe the Democrats have to embrace a Bernie Sanders-style disruption, something that will make people like me feel uncomfortable. Yeah, you think? Makes perfect sense to me. Meanwhile, one of the expert leaders one of the experts on, Marcia Gessen. I believe she was born in Russia. I might be wrong. But she is just an expert on authoritarianism and how authoritarianism takes over countries and all that kind of thing. She was on, I believe, she wrote this. Yeah, she wrote this in the New York Times. She's talking about Viktor Orban. Of course, Viktor Orban was the guy who was democratically elected in Hungary in, as I recall, 2010, maybe before that. And he served one term, and then he lost. And he was replaced by somebody else. And then he ran again, and he won. And within a year, he had flipped Hungary from being a functioning European democracy into an autocracy, into an oligarchy. And which I believe, and multiple people in the Republican Party have said that Orban and Hungary are their role model. So this is what Marcia Gessen wrote for the New York Times. She wrote, when Orban was reelected, he carried out what Hungarian historian Balint Magyar calls an autocratic breakthrough, changing laws and practices so he could not be dislodged again. It helped that he had a supermajority in Parliament. Trump similarly spent 4 years attacking the Biden administration and the vote that brought it to the White House as fraudulent and positioning himself as the only true voice of the people. He's also returning with a power trifecta, the presidency and both houses of Congress. He, too, can quickly reshape American government in his image. She goes on to talk about, we all remember Trump's first term and all that sort of thing. And then she goes on to say, it's not just what the autocrats do to stage their breakthrough, it's how they do it. Passing legislation or signing executive orders fast, without any discussion, sometimes late at night, in batches, all the while denigrating and delegitimizing any opposition. And I'm telling you, if Trump can get John Thune, who will be the Senate Majority Leader, and Mike Johnson to go along with recessing both those bodies for 1 hour, that's all he's going to need. He will immediately recess appoint all of his cabinet. And there will be no hearings. There will be no discussion. The Democrats will have no say in any of it. There will be no publicity about, the problems of these people, at least publicity that might break through into Fox News and through the right-wing media bubble. Here we are. We're quickly becoming Hungary. And this is frankly, a major, major threat. Marjorie Taylor Greene has gone off on this. She says that Matt Gaetz is going to prosecute crimes against humanity by people advocating vaccines, or words to that effect. That's not a quote, that's an interpretation. Here's what she said. Dr. Anthony Fauci lied to the American people, abusing his power and position and role, a very powerful role paid for by the American tax people. He lied and many, many people died. She goes on to say, now vaccines have been mandated on the population in order to work, go to school, and live as functioning citizens in the United States. I can tell you, when you talk about vaccine hesitancy, as one sitting before you who never took the COVID vaccine, nor will I take it, thank God, I'm so glad I didn't take it. People have perpetuated and continue to perpetuate these crimes, and they need to be prosecuted. And that needs to be starting in the next administration, and I'm pretty sure our next Attorney General will do that, and I look forward to seeing that happen. Now, this is somebody who's a very, very tight with Matt Gaetz. So Anthony Fauci going to jail in his, late 70s? Wild times. Wild times. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Stick around 16 minutes. It's Anything Goes Weekend. What's on your mind? Talk about anything you'd like. Stay tuned.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's your media support group for We the People. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Heather in Seattle. Hey, Heather, what's on your mind today?
Hey, so I do not understand why there is no call for any recounts. With everything that was supposed to be so close and the vote so divided, why haven't the Democrats said we want hand recounts before we hand over our country to these psychopaths?
Yeah, I'm with you, Heather. The Pennsylvania announced day before yesterday that they're going to recount several of the counties in Pennsylvania. If that shows any discrepancies, they may well, probably will recount the entire state. That could produce some real interesting results. But I haven't seen any stories about recounts anywhere else.
Exactly. And you have ballots, you have hundreds of ballots, possibly thousands of ballots that only have the presidential candidate marked. No other candidates or anything else.
That's not uncommon, Heather.
Even in this election.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
All right. Well, I don't believe that the Democrats are fighting this enough. I don't believe the American people understand, A, how close it was, that there's been no recount, that we have everything to lose, and nobody is saying, wait a minute, before we move forward, let's make sure that this was a valid vote. Yeah. Because Elon Musk has said it takes one line of code to change things. Georgia allowed Dominion's code to get out onto the internet.
Yeah.
Why are we thinking that this was a fair election?
Well,
because it's convenient. Because we do not have to
put a pin in that, Heather. We're going to have Steve Spoonemore on Monday, and he's raising some serious questions about what happened in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I get it. I'm not ready to go full on. Donald Trump, the election was stolen, but I would like to see some recounts. I'm with you, Heather. I need to move along, but thank you for the call, Mark in Darrington, Washington. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Not bad. Great job, you. And all the people like Robert Reich, Malcolm Nance. Last week you said Bezos took all of his money out of the New York pyramid stock exchange?
No, but Warren Buffett has not all of it. Warren Buffett is sitting on $325 billion, if I remember the number correctly. I'm pretty sure that's it, of cash right now. So he seems to be anticipating a recession.
Okay, and just two more questions. Where did I learn the term "the eagle and the bear will fight together against the dragon"? Was that Nostradamus Revelations or what?
Could be. It sounds familiar to me, but I don't recall where I heard it.
Okay, and why did the chicken cross the road?
I don't know. Why?
Because it was escaping from Tyson Foods.
Okay. I thought you were going to, because it was escaping from the Trump administration and the
well, you could use that
road
too,
was the Canadian border.
Or to show the possum that it can be done.
Yeah, there you go.
And last one. How many possums does it take to have sex?
I don't know.
3, 2 to do it and 1 to watch for traffic.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Levity is good. We'll be right back. 21 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. They called it blood libel, what the Germans were doing against the Jews, claiming that they were using the blood of Christian children to make their matzah. We've got a new blood libel now here in the United States. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump lying through their teeth, arguing that black Haitian immigrants to the United States, legal immigrants with green cards in this little town in Ohio, are eating pets. This is another libel that goes way back. In the 1890s, people were claiming German and Dutch immigrants were eating pets. Then they claimed in the 1880s, and actually as recently as last year, a restaurant got shut down in California because of claims that they were serving pets. They weren't. But it was an Asian restaurant. This is just evil stuff, these lies and spreading this kind of hate. And this is now the strategy that the Republicans are using. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com. Hate as a political weapon. Check it out.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news. It's misleading, it's wrong, it's designed to confuse. It will wash your brain and make you mean. Turn off the noise and say the truth unseen.
Welcome back, 23 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hi, I'm still one of those who I do not fault Harris. I do not fault Joe Biden for this election. I fault Powell. By the way, he in the last 2 weeks he pulled another $46 billion out of the stock market.
Oh, interesting.
Which is the reason why the market has gone down this week.
Huh.
He's still fighting Joe Biden. He's still doing everything he can to hurt the little people.
Well, he would say he's trying to unwind his quantitative easing,
Yeah.
That the Fed never should have been buying stocks to begin with.
Yeah, he would tell that lie. I still would love to have me and him sitting across the table and talking about the things he did.
I would pay to watch that.
The reason why we had that inflation is because Powell helped Donald Trump spend $5 trillion in his last 2 fiscal years as he was attempting to get him back in the White House.
Yeah.
You spend that kind of money. It used to be that even Republicans knew that when you spend a lot of money, inflation follows. And then all of a sudden they decided that we're going to forget about that. That $5 trillion didn't matter that Donald Trump and Powell was spending. Powell, when Biden became president, Powell continued to spend that money, because he wanted an excuse to raise the Fed rate so he can get rid of Joe Biden in one term.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here looking at a graph of mortgage rates. So in 2022, inflation hit its high in June of 2022 at 9%, and the mortgage rates at that time were around, this thing is kind of small, around 6%, 5.75. And when you look at this graph, so inflation shot up, mortgage rates shot up, and they basically leveled off all the way until September. Even though inflation dropped fast after that happened.
Right.
But
Which
Powell
reminds me of what Arthur Burns did back in the day, to Jimmy Carter.
And the same thing that happened with Bill Clinton when they jacked the Fed rate to 6.5%.
Yeah.
This is the playbook of the conservative Fed. They are corrupt to the core, and so what Powell did is something that he would never do to a Republican, and what he's doing right now, he will never do to a Republican. But what he's doing is he's trying to take the balance sheet down low enough so that $2 billion $2 trillion that he removed while Biden was president, he wants to be able to put that back for Trump.
Well, maybe. I mean, the flip side of it, Larry, is that, he might be inducing a recession. I mean, typically when the Fed raises interest rates as high as they have, the consequence is a recession, and it comes on the tail end of the goosing the interest rates.
That was the attempt that he did in 2023 when everybody was predicting it was a 100% chance that we were going to have a recession.
Right.
And Powell was promising pain. Powell was promising that the unemployment rate would rise above the level that it actually did.
Yeah.
Powell was promising he was going to destroy the Biden economy.
Yeah. No,
that's why Trump is president today.
Well, I think that's a piece of it. Yeah, you blame Powell, I blame the press. I think there's multiple fathers to this child. But Larry, good one. Thank you so much for the call. It's always so nice to hear from you. I appreciate it. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls on the other side of the break.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Anything Goes weekend here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Fair and only slightly unbalanced. Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Mark Charles and Soon Chan Ra. This is from Chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Mark, said this almost under my breath as I walked past a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and approached the group of men dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. Suck it up, was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice I said to the people, you cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human. Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. You are not welcome here, he said as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the inappropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. a white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. society become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. It is the primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination that shaped the European colonial settler worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit. End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Dum Diversus would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual slavery. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese took these ecclesiastical statements to heart and perpetrated the slave trade from the African continent to the European and the American continents. As a Christian ruler, the King of Portugal would have power endowed from the church to take possession of the other as slave labor from the continent of Africa. The pagan African body was just another commodity to be taken for the pleasure and profit of the European Christian body, the one made most fully in the image of God. In the January of 1454, Pope Nicholas authored another bull. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Well, let me guess, your medicine cabinet. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
Do you have that fire in the belly? The courage to stand, to speak your mind, to lend a hand, voting, shouting, making your way, standing up for democracy, every single day. The power's in your hands, the choices in your heart. From the smallest town to the biggest part, raise your banner high and let your colors show. With the fire in your belly, let your passion flow. Do you have that fire in the belly?
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Eric in Erie, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric, what's up? What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, Shabbat Shalom. I hear you looking for a slogan for your class warfare.
Yeah.
Well, both you and Mr. Rice have been like reading my notes or something, because it does come down to one very simple thing in all of the economics, all the graphs and specific data. There is one that does not lie, and it begins in the mid-'70s, and it is GDP per capita.
Right.
And it has been climbing steadily, but the workers have seen none of it. So how about meritocracy now? We've earned it.
Yeah, but meritocracy, that's a 5-syllable word. Polysyllabic words don't generally work.
They always go 3 words, and this is a 2-word, but, in typical, left-wing fashion, we're a slightly more sophisticated.
There you go. Okay, I like it. I don't know if it'll catch on or not, Eric, but keep thinking.
The GDP number is creepy. If they put that up as a visual graphic, there's no denying it.
Yeah.
The per capita climb, while spending power of the worker it's mainly flat, but it's actually gone down with inflation.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Eric. Good stuff. Appreciate the call. Keno in Lakeland, Florida. Hey, Keno, what's up?
Happy Freya's Day. May her love come to cover the United States again in the future.
Do you actually practice or pursue Norwegian religion? I'm reluctant to call it mythology, because then we have to call all religions mythology. But
well, I go to the Unitarian Church, which thinks that everybody should honor everybody's different views of religion, instead of saying, I'm going to kill you if you don't believe like I do. That the Unitarians believe like people should honor the different minds perceive life differently, and honor different religions from the past.
I'm with you.
And Freya was the goddess of love, and Empedocles, the Greek philosopher, said that life could be understood. Those people that have love and those people that don't have love. Trump does not have love for other people.
Right.
And but anyway, we've got to label this situation. A secular version of the Antichrist has arrived. The Democrats, now I tell people, I've got a lot of people in my life that are very depressed now, and I tell them a miracle is going to happen. We have to have faith that a miracle will happen, and but we may label this that not necessarily the Antichrist, but a secular version of the Antichrist, who is the great deceiver, who came on the scene and people believed was going to bring about goodness, but actually brings about great wickedness. So the Antichrist in one version has arrived, and like you say, we got to work for 2 years from now when we have elections again, and we're going to go through a great tribulation of what this new Antichrist has brought about. But a miracle can happen, and these billionaires that have taken over, they are the greedy schemers. Most people are not schemers in life. They want to just get through life, have a family, have a job. Right. But there are people who are schemers, and they scheme, and then they get wealthy, and then they get greedy. Now, the Dalai Lama said that capitalism going together with industrialism concentrates power too much in the hands of a few who will take over the media, and who will, with the use of the media, will deceive the great number of people that ultimately will bring about great suffering. And that's what has happened. We have been deceived by the greedy schemers, and they have brought about a secular version of the Antichrist, and that's the story that we need to tell. And we need to get a psychologist or a group of psychologists to understand these people that were deceived by the great deceiver. And something in their life was lacking. You were talking about Maslow a little earlier with one of the callers. Something is lacking in the lives of these people that believe the great deceiver.
Yeah.
And there should be a book of essays. Maybe you could have one essay. This scheme that started with Powell and Reagan to take over for the greedy schemers. But there needs to be a book by psychologists and people like you, Tom, with essays explaining how something is missing, the love. That Empedocles said that there's a lack of love motivates people. Yeah. So somehow, but the new secular Antichrist has arrived. Yeah. I would say is a story that needs to be emphasized. What's your reaction?
I don't disagree. I think that the primary emotion that is reflected by most of these people who have surrounded Trump and many of the Trump voters, and frankly many in the Republican Party, sadly, is hate or anger or jealousy or envy, and a lust for power. And, arguably all those things kind of, at least in religious context, fall into and I think in moral context, fall into the category of evil. So it's... we're in for some things. We're in for a rough ride here, but what doesn't break you makes you stronger.
The miracle may come from within the Republican ranks.
I suspect so.
Republican senators may begin to see the light that the great deceiver has arrived on the scene. This secular Antichrist has arrived, who's anti-democratic, and J.D. Vance may be a hero that will help bring the miracle about to return to democracy and get away from...
Yeah, it might be a good time to call 202-224-3121, the number for the switchboard, for the congressional switchboard, and ask for John Thune, the senator from one of the Dakotas, South Dakota, and just say, please work to moderate Trump's worst impulses. This, we're concerned. And
right on, Tom, right on. Yeah. I do call that number a lot, and many other people do that also.
There you go. Keno, thanks a lot for the call. Daryl in Washington, D.C. Hey, Daryl, what's up?
Hey, Tom, good to talk to you as always.
Thank you.
Soon, I believe, actually went to Russia in 2018 with the other 7 senators, so I wouldn't have a whole lot of hope there.
Oh, my.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not good news.
Yeah.
I had another comment, and then I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
My comment is I take the feedback with all the election stuff, like this is wrong, this is wrong, this is the problem, this is the problem. It's very simple. When you have to argue with the other side about what facts are, you're losing. You're always going to lose.
Yeah.
And until, as you have talked about daily for gosh knows how long, about the media, nothing is going to change. Nothing. Yeah. So I guess I had 2 questions. My other question is, I know you worked with DiCaprio before. What about him or Clooney or we need help?
Yeah. I don't think that movie stars are going to move the needle. We're to the point where this is all about raw political power. And if anybody is going to restrain Donald Trump, it's going to have to be Congress and the courts. And that means that Republicans are going to have to step up. That John Roberts needs to swallow hard and say, gulp. I guess maybe we went too far. That John Thune and Mitch McConnell and those guys, the power brokers in the Senate, I have very little hope that Mike Johnson will do the right thing. He really and truly is a believer in the end times, and he wants to see a war in Israel so that Jesus can come back. And he's like so far into this Christian mythology that came out of Rushdoony in the 19th century.
He came out against the Gates releasing the Gates stuff, by the way.
Oh, he did? Interesting.
Yeah, earlier. It was like an hour ago, I think.
So so the cover-up begins. Not surprised.
So my last question, I appreciate your time. I'll try to be quick. Peter Thiel, I wanted to know, I didn't know he worked for Sullivan Cromwell.
You didn't know he what?
He's intelligence of some sort. He worked for Sullivan and Cromwell.
Oh, interesting.
Which is Alan Dulce's law firm.
Yeah, I don't know that much about him, so I can't speak to it. Daryl, thanks a lot for the call. I mean, he made his initial money just like Elon Musk did with PayPal. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's talk media for the sane among us. We're still here. We'll be right back. welcome back. And let's see who's been on hold the longest here. Looks like it's Bob in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Hey, Bob, what's up? Bob in Tahlequah? Come on, Bob, you've been on enough times. You know how to listen to your phone, right? We've got him potted up. Okay, going once, going twice. Ed in Belfair, Washington. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Thank you for taking my call, Tom. I was calling in regards to the gal that called in despair. It upsets me when people are upset about, they think things are kind of, in a sad situation, but she's not alone.
Yeah.
None of us are alone. And so with that being said, always keep a smile, always, and put a sign up in front of your house, overturn Citizens United, or anything to put a smile on your face. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about making a train. The clown train is leaving. Put Trump as the conductor. Mm-hmm. Follow it by Musk. But I just wanted to call and let her know she's not alone.
Well, that's very considerate of you, and we all need to be figuring out, what we can do and how we can do it, and taking care of ourselves. I mean, that was my advice to Susha and Michael Moore's advice to all of us, and I think it's very real and important stuff that we need to take a break, and every now and then. In fact, we're going to be taking a week off or a week and a half off around Christmas time. And, kind of advance notice here. And, I think that's real important. Ed, thank you for the call.
Yes,
great to hear
always have laughter. Always have laughter.
There you go.
Always have laughter.
There you go. Thanks, Ed.
Take care.
Yep. Marshall in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Marshall, what's up?
Hey, I wanted to chime in on what to call the rich.
Okay.
Which is the evil rich.
The evil
rich. What they're doing is, they're funding climate disinformation and considering climate change and the sixth mass extinction, how they're accelerating. How could you call that anything but evil?
Yeah, there's a couple of the right-wing billionaires who have funded, in a very, very big way, climate change denial. Although most of that money, most of that funding has been coming from the oil companies themselves and their front groups. And I was going to, when you first said that, Marshall, I was going to say, I really believe that some of these people actually believe the stuff that they're selling. David Koch, for example, when he ran for vice president back in 1980, and he wanted to end Social Security, end Medicare, end all public schools, turn all our roads into toll roads, basically, just make America a nation that's just pure capitalism and do away with all the socialism, get rid of all the government supports for everything except the military and the police, even privatize the fire departments. I think he actually believed that if we did that, we would turn into a libertarian paradise. I'm convinced that David Koch actually believed that.
Well, there are mass murders and such that believe what they're doing is right, but that doesn't make them any less evil now, does it?
I think that's pretty rare.
Believe they have,
I think mass murderers are pretty rare. No, it's like how should a government run? That is a matter of opinion. Obviously, there are some objective, markers that you can use to argue the case, but lying about climate change, I'm with you on that. That is evil. Marshall, thank you for the call. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. When I was a little kid, my grandmother had a piano, and I loved to play it. I was incompetent, but I was figuring out all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of got away from it and, went to school and things got busy and just lost track of it. Well, now there's this fascinating new study out of the University of Geneva, Switzerland, that is making me think maybe I should go back and learn the piano. What they found was that they took a group of 132 healthy older adults, retired, 62 to 78 years old. Half of them learned the piano. Half of them took music classes without learning the piano. And what they found was that those who learned the piano actually had the strongest increase in their memory, in their mental competence, their mental faculties. Those who took the music classes also did well, but learning the piano was a huge step. So check it out. There's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Sun is shining high. Pick up the phone and give it a try. Gotta talk to you.
9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Alan in DeKalb, Illinois. Hey, Alan, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I kind of want to vent a statement here, and that's how I feel is that on election night, I fell asleep in America, and the next morning woke up in a mafia.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was my article today. I wrote, this is America turning into a mafia state. So, yeah.
It truly is. So I've been listening to a lot of your callers, and some of them that I've been listening to, they suggest that they need to take a break from politics in order to take care of themselves. And then other callers, they're saying they want to fight back, dive in deeper. Mm-hmm. So what I'm suggesting, what I wanted to call about I'm suggesting is there might be a third way that allows us to take care of ourselves but also fight back. And to that end, I'm thinking that the best revenge is simply living well, maybe by becoming an expat.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, I mentioned when I opened the show that I got a call about 5:30 this morning from an old friend in Washington, D.C., who runs a fairly large progressive media company, who had just had a long conversation with a former senior official in the Clinton administration. And they're both talking seriously about moving out of the country in the next month. Which just shocked me, frankly. And
yeah, absolutely. I don't, at this point, I've never entertained that idea, but at this point, I don't think it's a bad idea. Yeah. One thing I would say, though, as a progressive, maybe the most patriotic thing you can do if you're going to expat is expat to a NATO country, especially a Schengen zone country.
Yeah. In other words, basically to Europe.
At least, exactly.
Other than Hungary.
To Europe. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely not. We don't want to go from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
But at least you're in a country that can push back against the worst nature of maybe a Trump, maybe a Russia. If you move to Central America, you might be okay one day and then not the next. But I feel like Europe is actually the stable country that we were wishing America would become. So
yeah, Europe may be the next United States, although Europe is under absolute assault from Russia, via social media and propaganda and whatnot, but mostly social media. And Europe is swinging hard to the right. I mean, the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland party, the new modern kind of reinvention of the Nazis, is doing very, very well in Germany. It's the fastest growing political party in France. You've got Marine Le Pen. She's doing really well. Not quite enough to win an election, but she's getting close. Down in Italy, you've got is her name Meloni, I think, who was a fan of Mussolini. Her party came out of if I'm remembering correctly, her party came out of Mussolini's party. In Austria, the new prime minister is, I don't want to say he's a Nazi or connected to the Nazis, but he has some sort of past in that regard. I don't recall the details. In Sweden, you've got, they elected a right-wing prime minister. And there are a lot of people speculating that a lot of this is the result of Russian propaganda being taken seriously by people in Europe. The other thing, of course, is that a lot of black and brown people have emigrated refugees mostly from Syria, but literally millions, some estimated 5 million in the last decade or so, have fled into Europe, and Europe has been taking them in, and the European Union is requiring governments to take in a certain number of these people. Hungary is refusing. And some of the other countries are starting to push back seriously on it. but we're seeing the same kind of racist reactionaryism. And that's something that was frankly predictable. When a country the general rule of thumb is that a country can absorb about 1% to 2% a year of people who are not like them, and without social upheaval. But when you start getting above 2% a year, then you start getting pushback. You start getting a reaction. And then that reaction gets exploited by demagogues. I mean, which is exactly what we saw with the Trump campaign and the Republicans around Mexicans or Central and South Americans here in the United States, Guatemalans and Venezuelans too, and now Haitians. So
you're not wrong about that, because we spent some time in Berlin a few years ago, and they took in so many Syrians all at once that the Syrians are refusing to integrate.
Yeah, they took in a million.
From a lot of Germans is pushback, like you're saying. Yeah,
they took in a million.
Yep.
And Germany, I don't know if they have now, but because I lived in Germany 20 years ago, actually in 86, 87. What is that? Almost 30 years ago, maybe more than 30 years ago. But they had not yet given citizenship to the Turkish Gastarbeiters, the guest workers that they had brought in after World War II to rebuild the country, because they didn't have enough manpower to rebuild the country. And this is like second, third generation Turks who still didn't have German citizenship. There's a lot of reactionaryism in Europe right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out too. But I'm not sure that there's any place that's really safe. Alan, all we can do is do the best. All we can do is do all we can do, right?
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the call. Good talking to you. I'll be back on the other side of this break. It's Anything Goes Weekend, picking up your calls. The Republicans have plans for your health care, whether you're under or over 65. I'll tell you about that right after the break.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com. Club today, we're reading Out of the Wreckage, A New Politics for an Age of Crisis by George Monbiot. This is from Chapter 3, Don't Look Back. The political history of the second half of the 20th century could be summarized as the conflict between its two great narratives, neoliberalism and social democracy. Social democracy in this era, whose story I briefly summarized in Chapter 1, acquired much of its power and coherence from the thinking of one remarkable man. Across 4 decades, John Maynard Keynes's work dominated economic thought and practice. During the period the French called the Trente Glorieuses, 1945 to 1975, his prescriptions are widely credited with reviving economies and distributing their benefits. That they remain more or less the only mainstream alternative to neoliberalism today reveals a remarkable stagnation of both thought and ambition. The first and most obvious problem with an attempt to use Keynesian social democracy as a core political narrative is that the story is more than 80 years old. Political stories need to be renewed. If politics does not feel fresh, it struggles to kindle the imaginative excitement from which hope arises. The second problem is that the surviving enthusiasm for Keynes among mainstream parties is highly selective. It has been reduced in most cases to lowering interest rates when economies are sluggish and engaging in tepid counter-cyclical public spending, which means injecting public money into the economy when unemployment is high or recession threatens. Other Keynesian measures, such as raising taxes when an economy grows quickly to dampen the boom-bust cycle, the fixed exchange rate system, capital controls, and a self-balancing global banking system, an international clearing union, all of which Keynes saw as essential complements to these policies, have been discarded and forgotten. Not only does this ensure that the rich old story has been reduced to two thin chapters, whose loss of context destroys their narrative power, but the absence of other Keynesian measures, as well as changed global circumstances, weakens the effectiveness of the remaining elements of policy. Let me give you an example. In 2009, in the hope of boosting the economy in the wake of the financial crash, the British government spent £300 million on stimulating sales of new cars. Under its scrappage scheme, if car owners traded in their old vehicles for new ones, the government, with the help of manufacturers, knocked £2,000 off the price. This lavish program was partly justified as an environmental measure, though it was clear from the outset that it would lead to a rise in environmental impacts as the materials and energies used in manufacturing new cars outweigh any likely savings from better fuel economy. Its primary purpose was to boost British car assembly plants and protect the jobs of their workers. But European state aid rules forbade such schemes from discriminating between cars made in Britain and cars made abroad. British car parts assembled only some 15% of the vehicles sold in that country, which meant that 85% of the benefit went to car plants in Germany, Japan, and other manufacturing nations. We could see this spending as foreign aid to some of the world's richest nations. The current pattern of globalization, which developed partly as a result of abandoning the fixed exchange rates and capital controls that Keynes advocated, ensures that this problem is to some extent repeated wherever Keynesian stimulus spending is applied. It might lead to a general, if scarcely detectable, global economic uplift, but the domestic impact will necessarily be weaker than Keynes intended. This issue is compounded by the phenomena of job-free growth, caused in part by the automation now spreading into almost every economic sector. Today, governments pull the starter cord, spending public money and cutting interest rates, that ignited the economy and employment in the past, only to discover that it snaps before the motor fires. Two feeble measures, removed from the rich framework of thought and narrative in which they were once embedded, have little chance of sustaining a political revival. Another issue is that the troubles that beset the Keynesian model in the 1970s have not disappeared. While the oil embargo of '73 was the immediate trigger for the lethal combination of high inflation and high unemployment, called stagflation back then, that Keynesian policies were almost powerless to counteract. Problems of the system had been mounting for years. Falling productivity and rising costs push inflation, wages and prices pursuing each other upwards, were already beginning to erode support for Keynesian economics. Most importantly, perhaps, the program had buckled in response to the political demands of capital. Strong financial regulations and controls on the movement of money began to weaken in the 1950s as governments started to liberalize financial markets. Richard Nixon's decision in '71 to suspend the convertibility of dollars into gold destroyed the system of fixed exchange rates on which much of the success of Keynes's policies depended. The capital controls introduced to prevent financiers and speculators from sucking money out of balanced Keynesian economies collapsed. Today, it's hard to find a mainstream politician in Europe or the Anglophone nations, including those who call themselves Keynesians, prepared to call for their reintroduction. We cannot hope that the strategies deployed by global finance that helped to destroy the efficacy of Keynes's measures in the '70s will be unlearned. If the soft Keynesianism proposed by opponents of neoliberalism is to amount to anything but tinkering, it has to confront a wider set of challenges than most of its advocates have yet been prepared to acknowledge. But perhaps the biggest problem residual Keynesianism confronts in the 21st century is that when it does work, it collides headfirst with the environmental crisis. The book, Out of the Wreckage by George Monbiot.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to hour 3 of our program. It's Anything Goes Weekend. What's on your mind? I got a couple of quick stories here for you, and then I'll get right to your calls. The Inflation Reduction Act included a major subsidy for the Affordable Care Act to make health insurance for people under 65 far more accessible, far less expensive. That expires next year. That expires at the end of this year. And, Republicans have pledged that they are not going to renew the Affordable Care Act. They're not going to renew the Inflation Reduction Act. So here are the annual premium increases. This is based on this, by the way, is from the Center for Policy, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. And these are the annual premium increases. This is based on a 60-year-old couple with an income of $82,000. And here's how much it's going to go up. Oh, I'm sorry, it's color-coded across here, so I can't break it out for you. But here it is. A family of 4 making $65,000 will see their monthly marketplace premium increase from $126 to $324, an annual increase of about $2,400. An estimated 4 million people will become uninsured, almost half of whom are black or Latino. In states with high underlying marketplace premiums, such as West Virginia and Wyoming, you're going to see giant boosts. For example, a 60-year-old West Virginia couple making $82,000, that was what I started with, would see annual premiums for a benchmark silver plan increase more than 6-fold, from $6,970 a year to $46,000 a year. Right. For people with incomes above 400% of the poverty, they would lose their subsidies entirely, and which is not a massive amount of money. So get ready. If you're on the Affordable Care Act, it looks like it's going to get wild. Meanwhile, Jake Johnson is reporting over at Common Dreams. Republicans are making no secret about their intention to pursue sweeping health care cuts that would raise costs and imperil insurance coverage for millions of people across the country. And this all, you've heard of the Republican Study Committee. Well, the Republican Study Committee puts out basically their own budget for the GOP every year. And they say, this is what we're going to do. And they kind of speak for the Republican Party when it comes to policy. So Jody Arrington is a congressman from Texas who is a member of the Republican Study Committee. By the way, they proposed this year eliminating the affordable tax care credits altogether in their 2025 budget proposal, which came out last year. And he is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, so he has enormous power when it comes to these kinds of things. And he told reporters earlier this week that the Republican Party is looking to use reconciliation to pursue cuts to mandatory programs. Now, when you're talking about mandatory programs, that's geek speak, DC geek speak, for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So the head of the Budget Committee, the Republican head of the Budget Committee, and he will be next year as well, literally just told reporters that they're going to use reconciliation to, quote, to pursue cuts to, quote, mandatory programs. The last time the Republicans had a federal trifecta, you'll recall, when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, they actually tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act under Trump. This was the second year, or maybe the first year of the Trump administration. Last time, you'll recall, it passed the House of Representatives. It went to the Senate. It was ready to pass the Senate. It was a 50-50 vote, and John McCain came out and did thumbs down. And that saved the Affordable Care Act. It was one vote away. Well, John McCain's not around anymore. And it's not a 50-50 or 51-49 Senate like it was back then. Now it's a 52 or 53, Republican vote Senate. So get ready. Both President-elect Donald Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson said on the campaign trail that they're going to try it again. They're going to try to nuke the Affordable Care Act. And, of course, the other thing is that the Project 2025 called for Medicare itself to be phased out and replaced by Medicare Advantage, so that we're all back in the friendly clutches of the big insurance companies, who make huge contributions to Republican candidates for office, because the wonderful Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas being the deciding vote, voted to legalize political bribery. And this is what we get. All right, what's on your mind today? David in Woodland Hills, California. Hey, David, thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's up?
If you will grant me 30 seconds, I would like to offer a little bit of Native American wisdom and a little bit of Taoist wisdom, if I may. In many tribes, whenever a tribesperson went to the medicine man complaining of depression, the medicine man would always ask the same three questions. When did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop reveling in the wonder of Mother Nature? And the Taoist wisdom, the Great One remains cheerful in times of oppression. Cheerfulness, amazingly, is the source of the greatness.
I like that. I like that. I'm skeptical about the Native American quote. It sounds like something that, some kind of New Age person came up with, but I still like it.
And it explains why the master, especially the Taoist statement, explains why the master can love the person who is murdering them, because they realize it is but another child of an unevolved, but another child of God. And they also realize that the place you were in before you were in your mother's womb is probably the same place you're in after death, and so in a sense you're going back to a place you've already been. In a sense, you're going home again.
Yeah. I actually subscribe to that, and it's a good one. David, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the call. Dave in Atlantic City, New Jersey, also listening on Sirius XM. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for years of educating my mom and me.
You're welcome.
I just got a shocking question, and I'm just going to blurt it out. What would happen if the president-elect died before taking office? And I figure you would know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm guessing that it is in the, it's probably in the Constitution or in the, I forget whether it's an amendment or whether it's, what it is that has the whole thing about if the vice president declares that the president is incompetent and then the majority of the cabinet goes along with it, then the president gets kicked out. I think it's the 25th Amendment, that has to do with presidential secession. There's probably a provision in there for that. But my guess is the vice president would become the president, and then the vice president would have to pick a new vice president. But I'd have to look it up, Dave. I'm sorry.
Elect.
Correct.
You mean the vice president?
The vice president-elect would get sworn in on January 20th as the president. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't imagine anything else. I mean, that's the will of the people, right?
I'm getting dragged along with it. I feel it's out of my hands. I can only wait to jump on someone's train.
Yeah, well, you know, and you know, show up at your local Democratic Party and volunteer and show up with Indivisible. They're doing some great Zoom calls and they're pulling people together, and they've created this giant coalition of other groups. There's an active resistance forming right now.
Thanks for the inspiration. I may not be black, but I wish I could say I'm not white today.
I get it.
Thank you.
I get it. Thanks, Dave. It's 15 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Weekend in just a moment. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person? And we dare to say, no. Another one the Supreme Court got wrong. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Janet in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Janet, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what women are going to face when the administration becomes Trump. Because in Florida, we're already a theocracy. This is already happening. Mm-hmm. But something you're not going to probably read about is that they have a very punishing orientation towards women, and they have this whole religious thing where women who have sinned, and that's just about everybody who's divorced, had sex out of marriage, children out of marriage, been involved with someone of the same sex, or had an abortion. They have to do penance for their sins. These women have to wear plain clothes without any designs. They have to live a vegetarian lifestyle, and give up their possessions.
Where are you getting this from, Janet? What are you talking about?
This is my own experience. Mm-hmm. I have...
Your church laid this on you?
Pardon?
Your church laid this on you?
No, this is their churches. This is talking to terrorist women. This is what they've done to me.
DeSantis
and for a long time... Yeah, a long time I didn't know what this was coming from because this has been going on for years for me. Sometimes I'm a psychologist and my clients would tell me what was going on, so I would figure out what was going on with me. But interesting, my clients would call their counties mafia counties, their kids' schools, mafia schools, because they were punishing their kids as well. But what happened when I lived in my house was they poked holes in all my T-shirts with designs on them. Oh, they cut big holes with tongues sticking out of them on my flowered sheets, and they shred my towels.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Janet, and I hope that you have people that you can talk to about this and get some help in that regard. Janet, thank you for the call. Steve in Arlington, Washington. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
All right, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I'm going to let you know, for 5 years I was on Medicare Advantage, and this year I got onto Medicare Original. The way I'm looking at it now is, I thought so, but I feel like I'm getting screwed either way, because now I'm paying over $350 a month for the gap insurance, for the prescription insurance, for dental insurance, and that's a car payment. But now I don't know what is Trump going to do when he gets into office. I want to stay with Medicare Original, but I just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, there are some people who, for whom really the only option is Medicare Advantage, because, one of the Medicare Advantage plans that has, zero premium. It's just, the danger is if you get seriously ill, a Medicare Advantage is not going to be there for you the way that real Medicare is. And
well, I agree there.
With real Medicare, you can go to any doctor anywhere in the country, and there's nobody standing between you and your doctor or you and your procedures. I get it, Steve. There's no easy solution now that Republicans are running the show. They're definitely not going to, do what Bernie has been saying for years and years, which is strengthen real Medicare. Steve, thank you for the call.
I wish they would.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks a lot. It's 19 minutes, or it's almost 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. When Ronald Reagan took over America in 1981, we handed him a brand gleaming new country. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, Jack Kennedy, they had built America. We had brand new schools, brand new hospitals, brand new interstate highway systems, brand new airports, infrastructure. We were the envy of the world. And then Republicans came along and they said, well, you just cut the top tax rate from 74% down to 27% and everything will trickle down. Instead, what do we get? Billionaires and poverty. They said, hey, just deregulate guns, and an armed society is a polite society. Instead, we've got more school shootings than anywhere in the world. They said, just kill off civics and history classes in our schools and liberate our young people to focus on science and math. Now we've got people who don't know how our government works. I mean, it just goes on from there. There's a whole rant about it over at HartmannReport.com titled FDR Saved America, Then the GOP Ripped Us Apart. Check it out.
On a crisp fall day, a mystery unfolded in the strangest way. Robert Kennedy Jr. with the prank to play left the bear cub's body in the park's dismay. Bear with me, the stories wild and strange, from the Hudson Valley to the city's range. A tale of pranks and politics entwined. Will justice find its way? Will Remake a find?
I forgot about this song. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here, George in Cripple Creek, Virginia. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, did you see that Poland is planning to build a series of fortifications, concrete dragon teeth tank traps, and barbed wire entanglements along its border with Belarus and Russia, just in case President Trump, cuts off U.S. military aid to Ukraine and the European nations can't fill the gap, and Putin wins in Ukraine and puts Poland next on the menu.
Wow, that's a huge undertaking, George. That's going to cost. That's going to shave a percent off their GDP. Pardon?
I say it's going to take them a while to get all that stuff up.
Yeah. Although it'll be it'd be a good jobs project, I guess, for Poland.
Exactly right. Well, I hope it's more effective than the French Maginot Lie in May of 1940.
Yeah. When
the Germans bypassed it and sent tanks through the Ardennes forest because the French failed to fortify the Ardennes because they thought it was too thick for the Germans to get tanks through it.
Right, and they just knocked down the trees, didn't they?
Exactly right.
Yeah. George, you speak Russian, and you monitor the Russian media to some extent. I'm curious what you're hearing. I know that they're praising Tulsi Gabbard and calling her our girl, but what else is, or at least that's what the American media is reporting.
One thing I saw, I haven't looked today, but one of the articles was that Poland was, the article was claiming that Ukraine was close to collapse, and Poland was worried they wouldn't get their slice of the pie, former Ukrainian territories that used to be part of Poland. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. You consider that propaganda, though, right?
Oh, no, definitely. Yeah, I consider the source Pravda.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. George, I always learn something talking to you. I appreciate your calling in.
I enjoy it, Tom, and keep up the good work, and kudos to Mateo again.
Okay, I'll pass that along, and thank you so much. Good talking to you. Yep. Donna in Alto, Michigan. Hey, Donna, what's on your mind today?
Hi, it's the childless cat lady of Alto, Michigan. Okay. But anyways, I wanted to say that one woman that called in, it sounded like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I'm just like, don't do that.
Yeah,
please don't go there, because that's exactly what these people want.
Yes.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
And I say we need to stay and stand. And we need to find a way to celebrate in some way, not for, Trump being, elected, but, some way. Like, I ordered a new book called The Dream of Enlightenment. Mm-hmm. And I've been reading that. And also, start a new house plant, do something. I even thought about possibly taking a class at Grand Valley State on constitutional law, because I want to have a better understanding of what our founding fathers were discussing, and how would they relate today on what is happening. I don't know if they're spinning in their graves right now. I don't know, but
there's a great book. There's a great book by Professor Harvey Kaye titled "Thomas Paine and the Promise of America," that I think is one of the very best early American history books out there. Its focus is Paine, but it kind of covers the whole sweep of the Revolutionary era, and it's just brilliant. Anything by Harvey Kaye.
I do all my study, and as a matter of fact, I just tore through all my books last night because I told myself, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And most of my books that I study the most is about history and philosophy.
Yeah.
That's my favorite subjects right there.
Yeah.
But I think Americans really should start a really deep dive study on the founding fathers. And mainly Thomas Paine.
Yeah.
So, don't break down. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
You got to remember, these people are psychopaths, and they're weak.
Many of them. Yeah.
And they're desperate.
Yeah. I get it.
So, well, thanks for having me on, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Don. I appreciate it. Good talking with you. We're hitting the break here at the bottom of the hour, 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls. It's Anything Goes Weekend here on the Thom Hartmann Program. What's on your mind? Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's your media support group for We the People. We'll be back with your calls right after this. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Alan J. Lichtman, and it's titled Repeal the Second Amendment, The Case for a Safer America. This is from the introduction, titled The Book That Must Be Written. On April 28, 1996, 28-year-old Martin Bryant stopped at an inn near his home of Newtown in Tasmania, Australia, and shot to death its two owners. He then drove to the former penal colony and tourist attraction of Port Arthur, where he lunched at a cafe. After eating, Bryant pulled from his sports bag a semi-automatic rifle with a 30-round magazine that he had legally purchased through a newspaper ad. With no provocation, he began firing at patrons in the cafe and its gift shop. Before the police stopped his shooting spree, Bryant had murdered 35 and wounded 18 others. His motive remains unknown. There were people everywhere, bodies, said witness Lynn Beavis. I thought at the time, being a nurse, I've seen dead people, I've seen blood, I've seen things like this, but what I saw in there, nobody but perhaps a soldier would know what that was like. The leadership of a shocked nation responded to the Port Arthur massacre, not with thoughts and prayers, but with decisive action. The country's conservative-led government rebuffed their gun lobby and its American ally, the NRA, to adopt comprehensive national gun controls. In a 2015 broadside labeled Australia, There Will Be Blood, the NRA charged that those regulations, which Australia significantly tightened as of 2002, have, quote, robbed Australians of their right to self-defense and empowered criminals. If the NRA was right, America, with its lax control over firearms for alleged self-defense, should be one of the world's safest countries, certainly far safer than Australia, where criminals presumably evade gun controls to prey on defenseless, law-abiding citizens. Yet in the latest reporting year, gun homicides claimed 14,542 American lives, compared to 27 in Australia. And all homicides took 19,510 American lives, compared to 222 in Australia. Since the NRA issued its warning, firearm homicides have declined in Australia, while soaring by 3,534 in the U.S. An American is now over 30 times more likely per capita than an Australian to be murdered by a gun, and 7 times more likely to be murdered by any means. If we had rates comparable today to Australia's, some 14,000 American lives would have been saved from firearm homicides in 2017 alone. By the gun lobby's twisted logic, Japan, which has one of the world's strictest gun control laws, should be drenched in innocent blood. Yet out of a population of 127 million, shooters in Japan murdered only 3 persons and injured only 5 in firearm assaults throughout 2017. Australia and Japan are not outliers. As compared to residents of our closest peer democracies in the G7 group of nations plus Australia, an American in 2017 was over 20 times more likely to die from a gun homicide. The gun lobby would have you forget that gun deaths are not limited to murders. In 2017, 23,854 Americans died from gun suicides, 64% more than were killed in firearm homicides. As compared to the peer nations, the 2017 per capita rate of firearm suicides in the United States was 7 times higher, while the rate of suicides by other means was 40% lower. These other democracies all have strict firearm regulations. None has a constitutional right to keep or bear arms, a distinction the United States shares worldwide only with Guatemala, whose gun murder rate is the 3rd highest of some 195 nations worldwide. Why has America lagged behind the democratic world in protecting its citizens from needless death and injury? The culprit is not spending by the NRA on campaigns and lobbying, which other pressure groups exceeded. The real problem is that which gun control advocates fear to name, the Second Amendment. Led by the NRA, the gun lobby exploits a historically defective, perverse reinvention of this amendment to inspire their grassroots supporters, sell guns, and provide constitutional cover for their opposition to making us safer by regulating firearms. The competing movement for gun control has floundered in response to the gun lobby's triumphant marketing of the Second Amendment. Gun control advocates have righteous zeal and noble motives, but lack a winning strategy. Instead of forthrightly refuting the lobby's bogus claims, the gun control movement has instead fallen into the trap of lamely insisting, oh, we support the Second Amendment, but we also support responsible gun control. With such a self-defeating strategy, the movement can never win. It plays on the gun lobby's home turf and fails to rally the American majority that favors stricter firearms regulations. It provokes only scorn from a gun lobby that dismisses yes but assurances as rank hypocrisy. And it ignores the clear history and the true meaning of the Second Amendment itself. The movement for gun control must strike hard with a new strategy. Repeal of the Second Amendment is not only right, but realistic. It would break open the political logjam and open a path for the comprehensive national gun control and safety measures that have eluded the American people for so long. None of these measures would confiscate firearms or stop Americans from using guns for hunting, sport shooting, antique collecting, or legitimate self-defense. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. These form the Second Amendment. The book Repeal the Second Amendment by Alan J. Lichtman.
freedom's flame ignites. There's a beacon shining brightly in the darkest nights. From the hills of Appalachia to the shores of distant lands, the promise of democracy in the people's hands. Through the trials and tribulations, it stands the test of time. A hope for generations, a dream that will not die. Live democracy, guiding us through the storm. In the heart of liberty, a brighter world is born. Voices of the people, rising strong and free. In the song of freedom, we find our destiny.
Welcome back. 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Anything Goes Weekend. Kevin in Oxford, Michigan. Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
I was thinking about like messaging. You know, I watched Richard Ojeda, and he's a good guy, and he was saying, yeah, well, you know, the Republicans, they voted for Barabbas, and the Democratic Party, we voted for Jesus. You know,
yeah,
and it stuck with me. You know, and I was like, you know, that's right. You know, I mean, I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't know much about the Bible, but there is a story. I had to ask my mom. You know, and she told me. Yeah,
Barabbas was the thief who was on the cross next to Jesus.
Yeah, and the crowd was screaming to get him out or whatever.
Yeah, they said pardon him instead of Jesus. Yeah.
Right, and kind of exactly what we're going through now with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You know, so I believe, and not just Donald Trump, but the Republican Party and the MAGA people and those people that support that stuff. However, I believe that, you know, the Democratic Party should put out messaging. However, you know, and, you know, like to give that message, because these Christians will get it, you know. They'll understand that they voted in, you know, Barabbas rather than Jesus, because if they read the Bible, unless Christian is just another word, you know, because that's what I believe it is, you know, just a word.
Yeah.
You know, it's an idea, it's a word, it's how they interpret shit. I mean, stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kevin. I got to move along when you can't use language like that. My apologies if anybody's offended. Lori in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Lori, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom.
Hey.
I have a class that I would like to proffer up, and I think it's Marxist. I'm not 100% sure, but it's the ownership class. And that being said, I'll kind of weave that into my view of this election and where we go now. The ownership class. Okay. So there was a conspiracy to steal the 2024 election from the American citizenry, and it was brought to us by Russia, by the Supreme Court, and by the MAGA ownership class. We have documented interference from Russia. They called in bomb scares. They provided AI ads. They subsidized third parties. We have, you know, just point blank interference documented, which is against the law.
Yep.
And the Supreme Court sanctioned this with Citizens United. The Supreme Court also sanctions the purging of votes and voter suppression and gerrymandering. And that's just a few of the things. But the main thing is the Republican candidate for president denied any knowledge of the existence of Project 2025. I don't know what it is. I never read it. I don't know anything or any of the policies. Once the candidate was declared the victor, both the candidate and the buyers of Project 2020, they laughed at us. They said, we were all in on it. Now, that is, to me, total fraud. Okay, we did not vote for the end of Social Security, the elimination of HCA, Department of Education, FBI, CIA. I could go on, and I think you just did. Now, I think that all of these things have good cause. I'm talking about legitimate cause for us to immediately call for a recount in any and all of those states that were impacted by any dirty deeds done by the ownership class in conjunction with Russia, because we know that they didn't just do a bomb scare for nothing. There was something behind it. We need to get into it. Now, we didn't have 64 fraud cases up in the courts, taking up a lot of time and money. We're saying we had foreign influence in our country, and we're going to get to the bottom of it for all of the country, all of the citizenry.
Yeah.
I don't think Republicans wanted to have Social Security taken away. I don't think they wanted their health care taken away. I mean, this was a fraud perpetrated on all of us by the ownership class, and that's just what I'm thinking about.
I don't disagree with you, Lori, and I would love to see a recount of of the physical ballots in the 7 swing states. Because Stephen Spoonemore is looking at this and he's pointing out that these so-called bullet ballots, where people only vote for the president and that's it. The numbers are under 1% in pretty much every other state in the United States, but in the swing states, you're popping 2, 3, 5, 14%, stuff like that.
Can I
looks
just add
like
one
something.
thing to that, Tom?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The one thing, I was watching Steve Kornacki on MSNBC that night, and I literally watched this fine, busy-minded man say at least 3 times in the swing states, wow, that's odd. Another one that just totally flipped. It was this much was for Biden last time, and this time they're for Trump. And it was just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He got the new numbers, and the tally just literally flipped in 3 different states that he called. And that's all that I saw. I didn't stay up all night.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think we have cause.
I'm with you. Lori, thank you. Thank you very much. Abby in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Hey, Abby, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Good to talk to you. You used to often trot out a Harry Truman quote, I think it was, where he said that given the choice between a Republican and a Democrat that talks like a Republican, voters will choose the Republican every time.
That's
and
correct.
I've been thinking about that when I read John Nichols' recent column that said that Kamala is just wasting her time hanging out with the Cheneys.
Yep.
I mean, Kamala shared the
I think
stage
she actually
with
hurt
Liz
herself.
Cheney. I'm sorry, say again?
I think she actually hurt herself hanging out with Liz Cheney. And then after she was hanging out with Liz Cheney, she started adding to her stump speech, they want to rule all by themselves without Democrats, but I'm going to invite them to come in and have a seat at the table. And I was just, putting my face in my hand. I mean, oh, my God. Yep.
Right. Joe Biden shared the stage with Bernie Sanders, and he won.
Yep.
And Kamala shared the stage with Liz Cheney and lost.
Yep.
Now, my dad used to teach me when I was first coming of age, when I was trying to figure out the parties, he said that Republicans were for big business and rich people, Democrats were for everybody else. Democrats used to be for working class voters. My mission as a Democratic activist has been to get these voters back. And what's happened is Trump has been stealing our turf. He's been winning by talking about working class grievances.
Yeah.
The Democrats have forfeited that territory, and the only way that we can win in the future is to take that territory back. We have to go full Bernie and start being champions for the working class again. Talk about raising wages, raising taxes on the rich, bringing back jobs, bringing back manufacturing, and so on. So anyway, that's my rant. We got to go full Bernie. This sucking up to rich people, sucking up to rich businesses, sucking up to Republicans. It's not getting the numbers of voters that we're losing by ignoring progressives and the working class.
This all goes back to 1992 when Bill Clinton embraced neoliberalism and said, we're going to try this new experiment of free trade and fewer unions and low taxes.
From the party, they've destroyed it.
Yeah, and then Obama continued it. He had a chance to repudiate it, and he didn't. He embraced it, and here we are. Abby, thank you very much. It's 44 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of the break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Your media support group for We the People. Seems like we need a support group these days. Stick around. We'll be right back with your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
The Chiron over on MSNBC right now says Europe uneasy over Trump's unconventional cabinet picks. I'll say, no bleep, Sherlock. And welcome back. Jeff in Portland. Hey, Jeff, thanks for listening to X-Ray FM. What's up?
Hey, Hey, happy Friday, Tom. You know, in the 10 days since the election, especially these last 2 or 3 days with these cabinet nominees, you know, it seems we're well on the way to the dystopian future you wrote about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And to quote Thomas Jefferson, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be.
Yep.
And I think those words go a long way in explaining how we got here. But, you know, I agree with you. The focus has to be to organize and win back Congress in 2 years. And to that end, getting the DNC to ban dark money in the Democratic Party primaries, that would do a lot to re-energize the party and help progressives. You know, because besides losing the working class voters, the Harris-Walz campaign, they didn't do as well with young voters as Biden did in 2020. I think I saw somewhere that, you know, if you don't get 60% of the youth vote, if the Democrats don't get 60%, they usually don't win. And I think she only got 54%. So, you know, in my opinion, a good deal of her losing that youth vote was her unwillingness to break with Biden on Gaza. And next week, Bernie's introducing some resolutions to cut off military aid to Israel. And, you know, it'd be great if the Biden-Harris administration would recognize the error in its ways and do that.
Well, here's the problem, Jeff. I have a couple of very close Jewish friends who are just gung-ho for Netanyahu. I believe that the math for this, the calculus, the political calculus was they would recover those Muslim votes in Detroit, but they would lose 10 times that many Jewish votes. And that could be the margin of victory or loss.
But then that's what I don't think they figured in the youth vote, though. I think Ann Arbor, like in Michigan, you know, University of Michigan, a lot of young voters there. She did not do nearly as well as Biden did in 2020 in a lot of those districts as a example. So yeah, I mean, you know, why else would you explain the drop off she had in the youth vote compared to Biden in 2020?
I think Gaza is the principal thing. I agree with you, Jeff. Yeah. I really do. I'm just not sure that if she had taken the opposite position, if she had taken Bernie's position. Well,
she didn't need to take the opposite.
That it would have helped her win
she really didn't. Yeah, she really didn't do anything to throw a bone to.
Netanyahu basically set up a no-win position for the Democrats.
But she could have done a little to, you know, give an olive branch to the ceasefire movement, in my opinion, and the uncommitted movement. They were pretty reasonable, in my opinion. They tried to do it the Democratic way in the primary, and then they even explicitly said, we're not endorsing her, but we really don't want you to vote for Trump or a third-party candidate. But, Tom, my question, in the next 2 months, you know, like I say, I'd like to see Biden cut off military aid. But what else would you like to see him do to inoculate our democracy in these next 2 months, if anything, that he can do?
Well, he needs to get as many judges through as possible right now, and Dick Durbin needs to stop respecting blue slips. And I think that's pretty much all they can do right now. Everything else they might do is stuff that could be undone by Donald Trump. Jeff, thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Vivek Ramaswamy, during the first Republican debate, was laying out his vision for America and by the way, he was the #2 guy in the debate, according to the Washington Post, in which he was arguing that we should basically do away with all of our federal agencies. Really, virtually all of them. Just shut them down and make them go away. He's not the first person to argue this. David Koch, running on the Libertarian ticket in 1980 for vice president, was arguing the same thing. He had a long list of federal agencies he wanted to shut down. This is not an uncommon thing among billionaires, and Ramaswamy is a billionaire. They basically want to take America back to the 1920s before we had what they call the welfare state. And if they do so, they will turn America into a failed state. They want to make America into something like Haiti or Libya, and that would be a disaster. There's a whole article about it that you can read all the details. It's titled, "Is Vivek Ramaswamy a Different Kind of Republican Cat?" at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Every day's an opportunity to do something good in your family, in your community, in your
Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here on Anything Goes Weekend. Bill in St. Helens, Oregon. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Yeah, because we know that this gentleman getting ready to rule our country has no respect for the Constitution or original intent. I would like to point out that Article 2, Section 2, Article 2, Section 3, if Trump could be given the opportunity to put the Congress in recess, Tom, there's nothing in here that I can read saying he couldn't recess it for its entire term.
Yeah.
It shall reconvene when he may adjourn. And by the way, during that period, he could appoint anybody, including Supreme Court justices. It's interesting because their confirmation, it would die at the end of that term of Congress, but it doesn't change the fact he could do it. I've read and read. Nothing's saying he can't do this. He could literally recess the Congress and appoint everybody from now for the next couple of years. Scary.
Yeah.
Really scary.
Yeah.
I'll throw that out there because
I'm going to have to.
on the pale.
Yeah, there's a discussion about this going on in the media right now, and there's some concern around it. I'm looking Article 2, Section 3, and I'm not seeing it there. Are you sure?
Yeah, it's Article 2, Section 3. It says he may, on extraordinary circumstances, convene both houses of Congress or either of them, and in cases of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper.
Yeah.
And if he decides that's 2 years from now, we do. One thing I'd like to point out is Congress basically gave most of their authority on immigration to the president. They've given most of their authority on tariffs to the president. I would argue it with anybody in violation of the Constitution, Section 2, Article 2, Section 2, where it's clear. It's the only place where in the Constitution I've ever found where they actually give the Congress authority to vest their powers in another group. Only place I found. But we've allowed them to do this with other powers, and what scares me is, remember the Enabling Act in Germany was nothing more than the Congress saying the FEAR has all further authority to make laws and execute them.
Correct.
That's scary.
Yeah, and if Trump forces a suspension of Congress over the objection of, say, John Thune, who is not a Trump loyalist, then, and if he forces through that, and if he succeeds, and if it's backed up by the Supreme Court, then we know we are no longer a democracy. We have become a dictatorship, essentially.
Yeah, all it takes is the two Republican houses of Congress just saying, let's agree that we're going to disagree about when we're going to reset. Let's agree that we're going to disagree. And that throws it to Trump.
Right.
It's just that simple.
Right.
So anyway, scary times, Tom. Really scary times.
Yep, I agree, Bill. Thank you very much for the call. Conrad in San Diego. Hey, Conrad, what's up?
On the messaging, I've been kind of jumping up and down for the last 2 weeks because you came so close 2 Mondays ago to hitting the nail on the head. By the way, the morbidly rich, did you come up with that one on by yourself?
Yeah, as far as I know. I've been using it for years.
It's great.
Well, thank you.
That one is just great. We've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks, the media. We've just got to stop calling it that, or the legacy media, or the mass media, the mainstream media, because we're perpetuating a lie when we do that. We've got to call it what it really is, which is for-profit media.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They're not here to tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They're there to make a profit for their stockholders.
Right.
And they'll spin any yarn or withhold any truth in order to make a profit for their stockholders.
I think that's an excellent point, Conrad. And prior to the end of the Fairness Doctrine, all three networks ran their news operations at a loss, and that was the price to keep their licenses. Within 1 year of Reagan dumping the Fairness Doctrine in 86, 87, all three networks had put their news divisions under the control of their entertainment divisions rather than as standalone divisions. So, yeah, spot on. Conrad, thank you for that. I appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Ralph in Washington, D.C. Hey, Ralph, I got a minute left. You had a quick point about the president?
Right. I'll make this quick. The point earlier when somebody asked what would happen if the president-elect died, right now, before January 20th, well, the correct answer is that there would have to be a new election because the vice president was not elected president. It was the president-elect who was voted to be president. So what would happen is on January 20th, Joe Biden could not serve past that time because he finishes 2 terms constitutionally. So the presidency would go to Kamala Harris, who would serve until a new election.
Well, Biden wouldn't have served 2 terms. He's only served 1 term.
Well, right, but he was only elected to 1 term. He was only elected to 1 term.
But Kamala Harris wasn't elected to 2 terms either.
No, but she's vice president.
I see.
And she would take over for the president. And now they wrote a book about this. It was called The Amazing Election of 1968. When the author, I can't remember who it was, he thought something like this would happen in 1968.
Interesting.
So,
well, Ralph, thank you for that.
So check it out.
I got to run. Thank you very much. Hey, special thanks to Louise Hartman, Sean Taylor, Nate Atwell, Jamie Holly, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Spross, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jay LeBlanc, Jeremy Peterson, Connor Arroyo, Carna Verde, Martha Salinas, and Mateo Robertson, all the great people who work on this program. And thank you to you for supporting our program and spreading the good word. Don't forget, democracy requires you. Get out there, get active, tag you're in. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.